Squarespace block. It's a real thing. You have to leave in an hour, yet you're staring at a blank screen. The deadline will come and go once again. Coffee just isn't making a dent. You feel boxed in and out of ideas. We adore Squarespace and have successfully completed over 500 projects with the website builder. Yet we are not immune to the dreaded Squarespace block, staring at the screen, hoping for something to magically materialize. We have scoured the internet for the ideal wireframing tool and have come up empty. We adored the Squarespace section designs in the early days, but after hundreds of uses, they became stale. If I see that bloody landscape one more time. We've searched for, built, and even designed our own Squarespace templates, yet found them inflexible, restricting our design process. Instead of heading down the road to despair, we decided to course correct and build the mother of all Squarespace templates, a platform we could use over and over again, one that boosted creativity and saved us a huge amount of time. In our moment of despair, we forged SquareForge. If you need to freshen up your designs, save a heap of time, and, like us, don't want to move away from your favorite website builder, then we have built something that breaks the mold. And we know we have something amazing. And it's not because we're amazing, we're pretty boring. We know we have an incredible tool on our hands because we have used it over 50 times this year alone. We have built SquareForge from the ground up, pouring in over 20 years of web design expertise into a product that would work for us. We didn't even plan on selling it. SquareForge has saved us over 40% of our build time and ensures no website looks the same. It's time to say goodbye to Squarespace Block and hello to SquareForge. Let's build great big things. How would you like to cut your website build time by 40% without compromising on creativity or quality? Whether you're brand new to Squarespace or a seasoned pro, SquareForge is here to make your design process faster, smoother, and more enjoyable. In this course, I'll walk you through how to use SquareForge to create polished professional websites with ease. By the end, you'll have everything you need to speed up your workflow and design with confidence, no matter your level of experience. So why listen to me? My name's Elwyn Davis. I've been building Squarespace websites professionally for over 11 years, and I've been working in web design for more than 20. At Pixel Haze Studio, we've been using and refining SquareForge since early 2024, and it's already saved us 40% of our average build time. It's a toolkit we've relied on to deliver high-quality results for clients, and now I'm here to share how you can do the same. I also wanted to let you know right off the bat that SquareForge is a paid product. That said, I've included some goodies in the bonus section right at the end of this course that will help you get started for a lower cost. And if you're just exploring, the good news is you can use SquareForge.net and this course completely for free as inspirational. I will even go through the process of showing how you can stretch Squarespace and build these layouts from scratch. Some of you will look at this course and know exactly how SquareForge can help you, whilst others may not be ready to purchase. And if you're not ready to purchase, I still want to help you because I firmly believe and I've seen evidence that this process will save a huge amount of time for you if you're embarking on your first or 101st Squarespace site. So if you're ready to learn how SquareForge can transform your design process, let's crack on. So in this chapter, I'll show you two sites. One is SquareForge.net, this website, where you can see some examples, some videos that will help you on your way to make the decision in terms of whether you just want to use this as a reference point, as some inspiration for different layouts that you can create, or whether you want to go ahead and purchase SquareForge, upon which point you'll be given the SquareForge Master. This has all of the templates that are not on the menu system, so we can't see them here, meaning we can start adding pages as and when we see fit, go through and browse through the catalog of layouts, go into edit mode, and start adding them as favorites. One of the key differences between the two sites at the moment is this version of SquareForge, the master, has unique codes for every single layout and design section in this site. This allows us to use a retrofit service and new for the tail end of 2024 blueprints. So blueprints would be similar to your templates that you start with Squarespace, but the difference is they're all built from these wireframes, meaning that you don't buy a template, you buy a much lower cost blueprint that utilizes SquareForge to build the structures. For example, it could have Hero Classic 001. Then we go to the content section, and then it could be Content Short 003. So with the blueprint, you'll be given a list of all the codes for every page, and usually you're looking at about 4 pages per template or blueprint that we build. And it will give you the exact layouts. So if you already own SquareForge, you just have to go in and save the section as a favorite using the heart icon, and then you build up your own template through that. It means that we're not having to constantly ship, update loads and loads of templates. We give you some inspiration for how those blueprints can look. And it also means we can change up the content to show how it could work for a bakery, right the way through to a business consultancy. What the signposts say and where they go can change, but the underlying template and structure remains consistent. And that's the most important thing when we're working with templates, is to give us an idea of professionally spaced layouts that have a perfect balance between content and white space or negative space around the content, so that no matter what you build, it looks thoroughly professional. Let's take this section here, content short 005. This could look very different with a different background color, even a different photo behind it or texture. We could have a different font, different alignment of the font, so the text aligns to the left. We could put a circular image, a square image, an illustration. There's so much that we could do. We could drag and drop this image block to the bottom line of this section and have a photo that cuts in, all at the same time leaving the overall structure 80% the same as it was. And it means that when we go to mobile view, it's already pre-tested. We may have to change a little bit. For example, if we were to have a photo cutting in from the bottom, we would need to drag that photo down and then move the text block up. I'll be showing you how to do these type of things in future chapters. But the idea of this compared to a template is that if you own SquareForge and have a blueprint, which will cost something in the regions of $15 when we finalize it, you can follow the blueprint, but you can take it off-road at any point. So if there's another section, let's have a look at some options here. Let's say the template had 2 columns and we want to create a 4-column signpost section because we've got 4 areas that we want to link to. So we could look at the 2-column equivalents. Say, for example, this section here, the 3 columns, sorry. It means we could have a look at the 2-column equivalent, which would be this one here. Instead of having to work on that and extend up to 4 signposts, we can go with the 4-column signpost option and just save this one. Alternatively, we could go with this 2-column option and then double it up. So duplicate these sections, bring them down, and then we make it a grid of 4, 2 by 2. So much flexibility that we can work with. And I'd never want to see SquareForge as being a tool where you just literally stay to all of the template structures. These are a guideline to help you build websites quicker and then start to experiment, to start to push the boundaries and be more creative in the process. And if you haven't purchased SquareForge yet, so you won't have a copy of the master, what you can do is go to SquareForge, and this will be changing. We're going to be moving this into a directory system in the near future. So if it doesn't look like this, don't panic too much. The format will be very similar. They're grouped into different sections on the page. So our hero is our billboard, our main banner as we first land on the website, and there's loads of different options here. What we'll find is sometimes they've got background colors, sometimes they will be image blocks. This one has a background color that will change when we update our color pack in Squarespace, and I have a tutorial dedicated for changing colors and fonts a little bit later. These are 2 images, so we can drag and insert our own photos into those sections, so we have that stripe section with 2 photos. This one's got 3 call to action buttons. The styling of the buttons will change based on the styling of your site. So the colors, the font used in the buttons, even the rounded corners. So we could have these as rounded tabs so that they're rounded on the top, but not necessarily the bottom. All of these layouts are fully customizable. This one's one of my favorites, where we could put a really nice background image as long as the text is clear enough over it. And then we've got a circular image in here, so we can have a close-up shot within, say, a landscape or something like that. And that can work really well. Likewise, if you've got a circular logo, that can fit really nicely into that frame. It would be very easy to move that circle to the top of that block and then have a slightly different variation of that. We can compress and reduce the height of each of these sections, meaning that we can use them on other pages where the hero maybe doesn't need to be so deep. Content is a bit of a catch-all for most text and image layouts, not galleries, which are more image-centric. And this one's a really good example here. So we can see that the image overlaps, and that might look messy at first. But what we could do is add a gradient to the image in a tool like Canva or Photoshop, where it could blend to whatever the background color is here. It could blend into it, so it means that we have a gradient effect with the text overlaying it. This one's another clear example of where we can have a background image, then a closer up framed image here, and then 3 thumbnail images or icons in this list. So a very complex, bespoke layout that you can build in Squarespace. This one is one of my favorites for simple text-based content, where we're really struggling to make it look highly polished without bringing photography. and yet we can't get much sense from our client in terms of what imagery we can use on the page. So instead, we use text layout to make the website more appealing. 2-column layout works really nicely, and again, if we were to switch to mobile, it would conform and adapt to mobile view. If you were to decide to change the border radius on all of these buttons so that they're rounded corners or pill-shaped, that would be the same then on every single page. So we only need to do that once. That's why I've left them pretty standard in SquareForge, because once we start editing them, it will change. And finally, let's have a look at this layout here. We've got 2-column split. Heading on the left for impact, information on the right, that's nicely limited spacing on there, and then we've got signposts below potentially. Or this could be step 1, step 2, step 3 of a process we're trying to explain. These could be square, rounded corner images, transparent images where you see an icon but then the rest blends with the background, or images in a circular frame. And I did say that was the final one, but this one here, we've got the curved image. So if we were to add a photo, it would cut into that corner. And that's a unique effect that you don't see very often in platforms like Squarespace. And the layouts just keep coming. There's so many opportunities, so much choice in terms of what we can build. Signposts, contact blocks. There are layouts with inquiry forms all pre-built in, like this one with the photo on the right and the contact form on the left. This one with a nice centralized layout. You can start mixing and matching these, but what we're looking for is a series of layouts that we can then adapt and reuse on multiple pages so we can have a really strong flow on our site. Before we wrap up, there's a couple more different types of layouts. We've got grid galleries here. These are preset, meaning you don't have to configure them yourself. This one's really good if you wanted a collage type hero section on your site, or even a gallery section below the hero, where we've got photo, etc. So 8 photos there. And then finally, the offset one here, like a film strip gallery effect. So many of these I'm itching to have a play around with that we've only recently added them to SquareForge, and we're constantly building these. We're up to 375 unique designs that we can use on our sites. And we've even got video featured, which is a video and text block that once again allows us to create some really nice unique effects in our designs. Quote blocks I'll show you quickly. We've got the slideshow style quotes. We've got ones where we can put images in. Text above the content. We can have standard layouts where we have a thumbnail picture and just a fixed quote. High impact quotes. This one works really nicely with the rounded corners as well. And this is one of my favorites as well. We can have a cutout of one of our customers or clients, especially if your clients are comfortable having the photo taken. That can be a really powerful combination with an overall satisfaction score and a quote to go with it. And the list goes on. There's so many different designs here that we can choose. And the beauty of this is you don't need to buy SquareForge because this uses a list style. We can see the main giveaway here, these arrows. So you can add your own list block in your Squarespace site and just open this up in a separate tab and match it up to it. I use that as a starting point and then take it in the direction that you want. But all of these are tried and tested. I've been in web design for 20 years. I've been using Squarespace as a Squarespace authorized trainer and expert for nearly 11 years. Therefore, I can 100% hand on heart say that these will work for the vast majority of websites. Our job isn't to create things that are so unique that people need a manual to navigate through. Our focus is on the user flow of our visitor. Will it get them from A to B in speedy time? Or another way of putting it is if we're trying to funnel potential customers into finally making a purchase and becoming customers, our job as web designers is to grease the wheels and make that as smooth process as possible. And I know I'm mixing metaphors there. So hopefully that's given you a good insight in terms of what you get available with SquareForge for Squarespace. Next up, we're going to start building out our site and start using SquareForge. I'll catch you in a minute. In this chapter, we're going to go through the setup process for SquareForge, and you should, within a couple of days of purchasing it, receive an invite to access the SquareForge master. So this is separate to squareforge.net, the front-facing website that shows you some examples of the layouts. And this has got everything built in under the hood. It's also built for quick replication. And what do I mean by that? We've got the main navigation, which is completely empty, so we can start adding our home pages, etc. for it. But we don't want to do that just yet. What we've got to do is jump out of this section, and we're going to go back to account.squarespace.com and now click on the 3 dots next to SquareForge, and we've got the option to duplicate it. So this will be the SquareForge master that comes into your account. It will be a trial version. I'd strongly recommend that you put a point in your calendar to duplicate that website before it expires at the end of the 6-month trial. If you want to be extra safe, you can pay on a simple personal hosting plan to keep SquareForge running. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to duplicate the website. And this can take a few minutes to go through all the steps required. In fact, it will show you here. Sometimes it's taken as little as 20 seconds to go through it. Sometimes it's taken 3 to 4 minutes. I think it really depends on Squarespace server load. The reason we don't edit the master is because that would mean it's a single-use version, whilst by duplicating SquareForge, we can reuse it as many times as we want. And because we've left that menu empty, we can duplicate it for every single site that we work on. Whilst it goes through this process, there is a retrofit service that we offer and something that you could offer where we combine it with the Square Websites Tools Pro extension, which is available in our Designer Power Pack available on Pixel Academy. And that will bundle in SquareForge, membership to our community, and this tool as well. What this extension will do is allow you to take a design section, say from our master, and plant it in on an individual basis, so one section design at a time, into a separate Squarespace site. So if you've already designed a website for a client, or you've already put your own company website live, and you want to tap into all of the goodies in SquareForge, and just pick out some of the layouts without having to rebuild them, then this Chrome extension for about $130 a year, something like that, I think will make the job so much easier for you. I really should know the prices. I've created a series of tutorials for Square Websites, but that Chrome extension plugin is superb. Okay, so that's now created whilst I've been jabbering on about that. So what I'm going to do now is search for Square. Now, if you're new to Squarespace, you won't have the problem we have with so many different sites live. So I'm going to go right to the bottom, and we can see it just says your site title. So it hasn't populated all of the rest of the information, but we can see it's June the 10th, 2025. That's the expiry, so 6 months from now. And that makes a lot of sense. I've entered a site name, and now I can go through the steps, or I can just close it and jump out of that because I've seen those introductory steps too many times. But if you're new, certainly go through them. It'll help you get up and running. Now we've got that set up. There's a couple more things that I want to do before I go in and start adding in our homepage and showing you how we can use these layouts. The first one is I'm going to press /, and now I'm going to go to domains. And I don't have to connect a live domain name to it at the moment. We can still work on it in development mode, but we can see it's created a new random seeded domain here. So this is where we can change this first part of the domain to something more suitable for the project. Let's confirm that, and if the domain is available, it should work. So now we've got a new website set up with SquareForge ready to go. And in the next chapter, we're going to go through each of these layout designs and show how we can save them and start bringing them in to start thinking about wireframing our layouts. We've also got a dedicated chapter towards wireframing using SquareForge. And I'm excited to show you those in just a bit. But that's entire setup. Every time that we go through the setup process, we need to go back to our account. I'll show you one more time. I'll open a new tab. So it's account.squarespace.com. Then we have our websites that we have in there. I'd recommend as well go to these 3 dots and pin the project if it's not pinned. So that will mean your master template is pinned at the top, making it easy access to duplicate. Just bear in mind, it's going to take a couple of minutes to set up the new SquareForge site. But we do this in meetings with clients as part of the design process. We show them everything partly because this is our tool and it makes it easy, but also it's a strong interactive feature that brings the client involved in the project if they want to be. And we tend to find better results when we include clients. Hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next chapter. At this point, we can go down 2 routes. My preference is to put in all of the colors, styles, and fonts in place first, and that's what we're going to do in this chapter. But alternatively, you could just wireframe your initial homepage structure or key page in your site before applying any colors or styles to it. The benefit of that approach is sometimes colors can add a bias on structures and certain styles, and that is in particular the case when we're branding on projects, less so for web, but it's something to be mindful of as well. But I like to get the font and styles in so it feels like it's the client's project then from that stage forward, especially if I've got the client in the room, either on a virtual call or on in person, then I think this helps. So I'm going to go to site styles first. And we can see we've got the fonts and the colors in here. And this will do most of what we need to get the website set up for what we want. However, I don't have a style guide with color swatches in hexadecimal values, and that's all we need. And if you're in a similar boat, you can do this. Go to the main menu, then go into assets instead of pages to start with. And if you can collate everything you have on either your client's project or for your own business and upload them, that will make a big difference. So I'm going to upload here, and we've got photos to start with. So some of these are WebP images, meaning that they won't work without adapting them. So I'm going to leave them out for now. There's loads of online image converters that you can use to convert them to JPEG format, meaning the website can read them and understand them. If you don't see any straight away, don't panic about that. We can see in this corner here, we can see that images are uploaded. This can be a little bit touch and go. Sometimes it will show that they've not uploaded and there's errors. But what I find in most cases is that even if the errors show there, it still is working. Once it's doing that, then I'm going to go and upload the artwork and branding files. Again, if there's any in a format that Squarespace won't recognize, it will just ignore them. Okay, so it's uploading up to 41 images, but the graphics will be much quicker uploading. So once it's got those photos in place, it should really kick in and be much faster. We're getting there. You can see some of these are on a white background, so we can just about make them out. And because this is a heavily optimized, customized font, that's why they're saved as graphics. But normally we try and avoid using graphics for titles, so we're going to have to look at that as a trade-off with the website. We can use them, but sparingly, because we still want this website to perform on search engines. Okay, so I think they're all uploaded now. So now we have all of our assets in here. One of the easiest ways to get this set up now for colors and fonts, I'm going to duplicate this tab. And in this first one now, I'm going to go back to Pages, and from here, go to Site Styles, and we're going to click this arrow next to Colors. I'm going to use a Chrome extension called Colorzilla, which is this one here, meaning that as soon as we've got a image or graphic in Google Chrome, we can now color pick it. So I clicked on it once, so you get color swatch. Now it's automatically copied that yellow to the clipboard. And now we're going to go and start filling in this color palette. So I click on it to edit the palette, and this yellow is going to be the middle color. So now we've got that in place. Let's go and grab the blue, which won't be the darkest. It'll be the second darkest color because we've got a very dark navy, which we can use. So now I'm going to paste Command A to select all, or Control A on a PC, and then Command V or Control V to paste. As we can see, it's looking very different. We're probably not going to end up with this look. In fact, I'm certainly won't. We're going to be quite sparing in terms of using the colors. This gray here is another color, so we're going to use this as the, not the lightest, but the second lightest color in the palette. You might find that ends up being a little bit too dark. We'll find out, because we may have to adapt to one or two of them. This one here then, just a rinse and repeat process. We're going to take that. It's not black. We can see that it would be 6 zeros if it was black. It's just a very dark navy color. And then we're going to leave white as is. There we go. We've got our 5 main colors swatches from our color palette. We start with the lightest on the left. We go to the darkest on the right. And now this already starts to feel more like their website than ours. If you're seeing gray sections, that's because they're image blocks. And we can swap them, obviously, with photos or graphics, illustrations, as when ready. That's the color palette sorted. Next up, we're going to jump back out of that, and we're going to go into fonts. All font packs. We can either select font packs from here, or instead, we can choose individual fonts and search for them. So this website uses a custom font for headings. So we're going to end up replacing this. I probably won't do it as part of this course, but I probably will create this as a separate YouTube video because it's rare that we need to bring in custom fonts, but there are always times when we obviously need to do that. So I'm just going to bring down heading 1 so it's more in line with the other fonts. We use the heading 1 once per website, and then heading 2, 3, and 4 we can use as many times as we want. What we're trying to do is nest heading 3s within heading 2 and heading 4 within heading 3, if that makes sense. We can't always do that to get the look and feel that we want, but that's generally the rule of thumb, is it cascades in, starting with the heading 1 that's used once, which is usually the largest font or should be the largest font, and it gets smaller then as we go up the numbers, the size of the font gets smaller. Base size is 16 pixels, and we're happy with that. It's starting to look quite nice. And now let's change the paragraph font, and now Montserrat is available there. It's on a very thin weight. Montserrat's one of the most flexible options for font weight. I think that's quite good. It's not too heavy. It allows us to put bold on the text if needed, but it's still easy to read, and that legibility is really important. Okay, so that's font setup. Now let's add in our logo just to wrap up this chapter. So I'm going to save at that point. It's always good to save. This is a live website, so if our internet cut out or there was a little issue with Squarespace, we could lose the updates we've already made. And now I'm going to add the logo, but this time I'm going to select from library because it should be in here. Just got to find it. It'll be this one if we're going to go on a white background. We may change this and go for a darker background for our hero section, but I'm going to be doing a live stream on our YouTube channel where we can actually go through this project and build it. And we're actually bringing the client into the process as well as part of those live streams. Okay, that's already looking nice and set up and ready to go. So if we do this with a client, this is what we tend to do first is if we've got their brand toolkit, we'll put everything in. And then when they come into the meeting, it already looks like it's a good starting point. Because what we'll do in the next chapter is start with a blank page on our main navigation and start adding sections to wireframe the layouts. We're not going to worry too much about image selection, although we might drop 1 or 2 in just to see how it all clicks together. But for now, I think that's enough for this chapter. We now have our website ready to start building layouts. So we've done a bit of time travel with this chapter because this, as you'll find out in a bit, is actually what we cover in the next chapter. And I felt at the end of that, watching it back, it maybe didn't go through the basics straightforward enough for someone new to this. If you're used to using Squarespace and generally technology, you're probably going to pick this up really quickly because it focuses on 1 or 2 of the really good features that you get within Squarespace. However, if you're new to it, then you may have struggled to keep up with the pace of it. So that's why I've sandwiched this extra chapter in between, which will slow things down and just go through things step by step. I still recommend that you watch this even if you feel quite comfortable with it, because it can be reassuring that you're going along the right lines in how to use it. Our first step is to go and find designs. So we can browse the catalog here. They're in folders so we can collapse and expand them. So if there are collapsed for you, don't forget that you can expand them because you may miss out on various designs. So this is a hero section for pages other than the homepage. Of course, you can use it on the homepage, but these tend to be more compact as opposed to the Hero Classic, which are their big brothers. So these are deeper headers with more impact. And so a couple of things before we start replicating these. We've got a background here, which could be a color, it could be a texture pattern or photo. We can layer photos over top of it using image layers as well. And that's what I thought we'll do on this one is we're going to go in and edit it. It might just take a second for it to load that. And what we're going to do is we're not going to edit this section on this page. We're just going to click on this save section or add it to favorites. And that's it. We leave these as they are. Once we're finished with SquareForge, we can of course delete it and remove the forge and have just the core pages left. But you may want to come back and use some of these layouts 3-6 months after the website's gone live. All of these pages are hidden from Google, so they're not going to come up with this random content on Google search results. So that's some peace of mind there for you. We've got so many different categories of content styles that we can browse through. And if we wanted to choose this one to go with our heading, we click Edit. Now with it in edit mode, we can once again save it. It's a rinse and repeat process that's as complicated as it gets. Each of these designs have been adapted for mobile. You will still need to check them because the moment you start modifying the content, it might throw out some of the spacing, but there'll be far less work to do here on average than if you were to work from scratch in Squarespace. So if we go back to the home page, we've already got a structure here. So what I'm going to do is add a new page called, just call it About for now. I'm going to drag it, click and drag it below the home page so it appears on the menu. And now we're going to add our two new layout styles. I'm going to click Add Section, then Saved Sections, and now we're going to select our heading. And we're going to add a new section. It remembers it as saved sections, so we don't have to do an extra click there. And now we've got our content in place. I can click and drag these elements, move them so that heading style didn't quite align with the content below. So we can adjust either the content or the content in their hero section so that they align neatly on the left-hand side. But now it's a case of we can double click in any of these boxes, change the content. We can go into Edit Section and change colors. And to change that bright one, which is a bit of a wildcard color, it's a color that sits outside of the color palette. But we can adjust the color packs accordingly for a very different look and feel. Before I wrap up this chapter, we're going to go through one more thing, which will be adding an image. And we can add an image with a shape, should we want to, and adjust it accordingly. And if you're feeling that you're in need of more Squarespace help and support, head over to Pixel Haze on YouTube. We've got loads of tutorials showing how to get the most out of these designs, and we'll of course be covering this in more detail before the end of the course. But I'm going to choose an image from the library. And I'm going to put this in a shape. So it's just floating there at the moment. If I click on the pencil icon, go to Design, I could get it to fill the frame, but it still looks a bit boxy. I could maybe round the top left and top right corners to soften the edges a little bit. Or alternatively, I could just choose a shape. And we've got 1:1 ratio, 2:3, which are vertical, which will be more in line with what I want here. And then choose a shape that works for us. So we've used this one in the previous next chapter you'll be watching. But that's just showing how we can get this tool work. For example, if you only had 2 tips here and you wanted to make these block longer, you just delete these 2. And then these will extend to fill the gap. Likewise, you could put a circular photo in above each of these, bring them down and get rid of the other 2 below as well. So much customization that you can do to these. And what we should find is there'll be a little bit of work to do on mobile, especially with this header section that we've just added. So I can move this title up, make this image bigger, and bring it down so it sits flush to the bottom of that container. It's balancing out between breathing space and not having too much scrolling, so that's something we could do there. We can also go in, edit the button styles to put rounded corners on them or pill-shaped buttons, which would suit this site better. But that's stuff that we'll be covering in the future. So there's the basics. We need to go and find our section designs that we really like from the catalog on the left-hand side, all in folders so we can collapse them up so they take less space. Once we find a style that we like, we click Edit. And now we can click on Save Sections to add it to favorites, meaning that we're not reinventing the wheel. So this should give you the grounding that the next chapter, I feel on retrospect, failed to do, but that will go into more detail in terms of how we can start building and wireframing our homepage. And I'll see you on the other side. Last time out, we uploaded all of our assets that we have so far. We adjusted the color palette and inserted the font. And we can see it's already starting to look really nice. We've got the logo in place as well. But if we look through it, none of this makes any sense. They're all hero sections of a certain class. And we need to start looking at making this look like a standalone website. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go to this plus icon next to the main navigation, and we're going to add a blank page. We're going to call this home. And we now need to set this as our home page on our site. So I'm going to scroll down here and set as home page. Confirm that. That removes our support page, which is what you see initially when you log in. So of course you can delete this support page if needed. It's no longer needed in the site. Or what I'd recommend is leave it in there until you get up and running. What we can do now is we can see all these footer designs. So we're going to find one that's suitable for our site. And because MRC, this project, is at a physical location, we're going to find an example with a map. So I think we're going to go with this one. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to move it to the bottom. And then what I need to do now is just remove all the other layouts that I don't want. In fact, these two combined could be quite nice. I'm not going to worry too much about styling it at this stage or updating the content to fit exactly what I need. Also don't need that in place. We're just going to get the rough structure for this footer in place first. And then remove all of the sections that we don't need. At the moment, there's no way to add footer sections as favorites, which is what we will be doing in the next section for the main areas of the homepage. We only need to do this once. Once we design a footer once to match our site, it will appear on every page. So I'm going to go for the darkest colors for our footer. Two-section footer for now. I want to make this more compact here. I'm going to edit this section. I'm going to remove the full screen option just to make it more compact. I'm certainly not signing that off as a footer structure. There's more work to be done there, but it's a start and it will just go on the bottom of each page. Now we can save that, jump back out of it. And now we're ready to go in and start choosing sections to go into our homepage. So let's have a look at Hero Rounded and see what we've got there. It's the thing that I'm happy with. This one needs a bit of custom code. Basically, we need to update the block each time we replicate the site because the blocks all change, they're dynamic. So look, some hero grids. It's difficult at the moment because I'm going to be briefed on this project a little bit later. So I just need to pick one now, just to pick a lane. And then from that point, then we can work on it afterwards. Let's go for this one here. So I'm going to click on Edit. And we can see image blocks here. So they'll all be replaced, obviously, with our final images that we add. Don't need to save it because I just need to click on that heart icon to add it to favorites. And I'm going to do it again here just to go through repetition. And I'm going to go for a more simplistic hero section design as well. I think I'll go with this one with the double call to action. So I just click on the heart icon. And next up, we could find some signposts. As I said, we'll be going through this later with Ken, who's leading this project. Ken's our lead creative at Pixel Haze. And he will be able to give me a lot more insight in terms of what's needed for this project. So I think we'll go with this one, simple call to action signpost. We might be going for rounded corners. And let's add in content short, just like a short introductory section. And we're going to keep it really simple. Actually, we'll go with that. And let's go for a grid gallery. And we'll go with 4 images. Have that as favorite. So these are all gray blocks. The reason we keep these white labeled and simple is just because it really comes to life when you start putting real content in there. You don't ever get tired of grey blocks in the same way as you do with the same stock images that you reuse over and over again. And if those stock images don't really tell the right story, it's best sometimes not to tell any story, which just draws your focus to structure alone. So that tends to be why we go down that route. And let's have a look at some of the single testimonial options. I think we'll go for this one here, which allows us to put a photo in if we want to. So we could have a cutout photo that we could create really easily in Canvas. We could remove the background and then have a photo overlap in the backdrop, and then a thumbnail image then if we wanted to in that card area. So yeah, that's pretty much the design structure that we're going to go with. We can tweak any of these layouts at any point. These are just a starting point so we can build the website really quickly, then adapt it to our bespoke needs. Of course, you don't have to do that. You can go with the standard structure. So I think I'm going to go with this one instead of this one here. And let's change the background and see what we've got in the library that could do the job nicely for that. I think we're going to struggle to find a photo that will work as a backdrop. So you can see that just looks too busy. So we're going to remove that. We're going to go with lighter colors for it. And I think we might even try some cutout photos. There were cutout photos in the library. What I can do now is align this image to the bottom so it'll fit perfectly on the bottom of that section. And I'm not going to worry too much about anything else in here because this chapter is all about getting the structure in. So we can get that cutting in below. The content doesn't make any sense. Don't panic about that. We can put a grid of 4 images going across here to split up the page, act as a natural divider. Then we can have probably won't be services, it'll be audience breakdown in terms of maybe the fitness, we move, we play, and showing down the differences between those sections and adding community. Again, this might be completely carved up and changed later. And then for the footer, then we're going to wrap it up with a testimonial. And let's just replace this image. So this is an image shape. And I think we'll go with that, which works quite well. So we've kind of still got a wireframe structure, but we've added a couple of images to see it come together. We've got a clash of styles here. We've got rounded corners in some sections. We've got straight edges in others, but that'll be part and parcel of refining and in developing this as we go forward. This is probably where I will end with this particular project here as part of this mini course. But if you're intrigued in finding out how this ends up, then head over to the Pixelated YouTube channel because we are going to be recording via live streams the rest of the process of building this website, or at least all key aspects of it. If you are intrigued in finding out how this ends, head over and take a look. But we're going to leave it there. Next up, we're going to start exploring in more detail, showing how we can use variant and section designs. And I've already got examples of other websites that we're going to be using for that part, so you're not just tied to one individual project, and hopefully it will showcase the flexibility of SquareForge. Hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next chapter. I'm going to go into edit this demo site, and then I'm going to add section, and I'm going to add a blank section. So we're going to start from scratch with every single one of these. Once I've created one, I'm probably just going to start adapting it to show you how the other layouts are put together, if that's okay. So we've got a dotted vertical line. I will need to just go and steal the code for that section. In fact, I could just do it from scratch. And we've got the button here and the title. Only a handful of sections require custom code, which is built into SquareForge. And trust me to pick the one of those to start off with. I'm getting rid of that photo on the right. And now, I did say I was starting from scratch, didn't I? Okay, please forgive me. I'm going to start editing the section. We're going to choose a background image. Even though we can see it's a blank background, the idea is it's designed to be a boilerplate template so we can put our own images in place. So here we're going to get one that was already used in this library, something that will do the job quite nicely. I think we're going to go for this one again. Challenge we've got with this one is the photos in the center. So I'm going to show you now just to offset it to the right. So we can go into edit, and in the photo editor, I'm going to change it to 16:9, which is going to be closer to the ratio that we're after. And then I'm going to crop the image in. Hopefully there's a high enough resolution so we're not going to lose any quality. So that photo then, or the detail of the photo, will be off to the right, freeing up space now for us to put our text on the left. We can see it's got a really light fuzzy overlay. So first of all, we're going to go to the darkest setting, and that will put a darker overlay over top of the image. And if we go to background, this is where we can increase the overlay opacity. So we can see it's got this gray overlay. So I believe that's the darkest color. But if we go for bright, for example, we could probably turn that into black background, but we're going to go with that. Okay, now we've got our image. Let's add our title. I'm just going to copy. Squarespace will let me copy that text. Currently, it's got this expand to container overlaid on top of it. I'm going to get rid of that. Just get rid of the extra spacing in between each of those lines as well. And let's have a look. So we can see the text is left aligned, and then we've got the dotted line to the right. Although I quite like the title over 3 different lines. And we can also see here that we've got this vertical line. Like, crazily enough, Squarespace does not have a vertical line option. At the moment, if I go to line, we've got some basic align it to the top, bottom, or center option, duplicate it, pin it, which is a feature I'm not going to go through at the moment, or delete it. There is no vertical option. So instead, I'm going to go to add a block, and I'm going to add a shape. First thing you'll notice is the minimum shape width is the width of the block. So again, no simple resolution for this. But this is where the custom code comes in. So what I'm going to do first is align this text block to the center, so the top and the bottom is going to be uniform to the text. And I'm going to add our button, and then we'll add the custom code right at the end. So I'm going to align that there. Now I'm going to switch to mobile view. Forgot to mention that we're going to get all of these working wonderfully on mobile as well. If I choose to align the block to the middle, that means I can extend the text block to the top and the bottom of that line. I can now choose to put the button in this section here, or if it's a bit cramped, I can decide to change it up a bit and go for a different layout on mobile. For example, putting the line to the left of that area. Bear in mind, it won't have a full block behind it. Right. We've got the layout as we want. We're going to have the line coming down here. So let's now use a Google Chrome extension that I use quite a lot, which is this one here. So if you look for Squarespace block identifier, this one's called Find Squarespace IDs. You can just copy the section block or the individual block. So here we can see this block is applied to the title, this one for the button, so it must be this one for that block. Now I can use / on the keyboard and do a quick search for CSS, which will bring up the custom CSS window, much quicker to find it this way. And now I can paste that block in, and we can see I put a curly bracket, and this is as technical as we're going to get. So you could just freeze this frame once I've typed it out and just copy this in. So border, right, probably about 2 pixels or 3 pixels. So 2px, then dotted, I believe, but you could use solid or dashed. And we're going to make sure it's white. Alternatively, instead of white, you could use the hexadecimal value with a hashtag, and then FFF is for white. I also use this Color Chrome extension, which allows you to pick a color from the page. So if we wanted it to tie in with the brand colors on the site, we could certainly do that. And actually, let's just demo this now as well. So if I pick color from page, I wait till the swatch in the toolbar that's popped up changes to the gold, this section here. And it's been a bit finicky. Come on, work. I think it's partly because I'm in the Squarespace admin area. There we go, it's copied that to the clipboard now. I've also got this toggled on still, the block identifier, so I'm going to just remove that. And now that color should be copied to the clipboard so we can paste it in as our dotted line. We can actually see it in place. I want to get rid of the background. Try background none. My CSS code is a little rusty, so if I've done this display none, that's obviously getting rid of the border as well. But I believe that now we've added the custom code, I can simply just go to the block settings itself and make the background color transparent. Double click on the shape, and then we go to the color swatch option. I think what I'm going to have to do is choose a color, then drag the opacity down. So that uses less custom code, which is better, and we can see that dotted line. The only problem is we can't see it very well. So we've got a couple of different options here to jump back into the CSS, and we can change it to 3 pixels, make it a bit stronger, and we could then decide to put it back to FFF, which is white, to make that a little bit stronger. And I'm probably going to go with maybe 4 or 5 pixels. There we go. 5 pixel dotted line, and now we've got our divider in place. We're already 12 minutes in and doing one layout. Trust me to pick one with custom code to start with. But that's how it looks on desktop view. If I switch to mobile view, we can see the line now is on the left-hand side, so we're still making a use for it. And there we go. That's our first layout. Now we're going to start speeding up some time, because for the second one, we can just add a little bit of content to this. That should be easy enough to do. So let's edit. I'm just going to add a blank section in between. Edit this, make it really small. Just so we've got a divider so we can easily see the sections apart. I'm going to do the same. In fact, I don't need to do that. I can just duplicate this one. So we're going to use this as the basis to save me having to go through adding the photo again, etc. We can just use that one. And we're going to duplicate the spacer block as well. Bring that down one. So now we've got our 2 hero sections. I'm going to leave that one there just as a reference point. What we can see here, because I've duplicated the section, the dotted lines disappeared, because that will have a new ID block now. So instead of fixing it again, we don't need it for this layout, so we can get rid of that. We're going to need our call to action button. And I'm going to see, can I flip the image? I think we can. So go to the crop option. Yeah. I can flip it to the left, meaning we can have our text block to the right. Now if we look, we've got this in a block section. So we're going to need a sentence. Something like this will be perfect to go with this block here. So I've got 2 ways of doing this. I can either have 2 different text blocks and then add a shape behind them, or I can add them to one. For the sake of this one, now you shouldn't do this because you should get your heading styles correct across the board. So I'm being a bit naughty with this here. But what I'm doing is changing that to a heading 2 just so it's not going to be so large on there so we can get our text block to fit. But what you can do is in the site styles here, you can change your heading sizes to match what you want. But this means that we can get this all in one block. And with this layout selected by clicking on it once, if I click on it twice, it goes into the text editor, which I don't want. I just want the block editor. So click on it once, go to this option to edit the background, and now I can add a background. Now I can add padding to that block, and I'm going to go for large, but you can fine tune the size of it as you want. And there we go. Not too far off that design. So here we've got more spacing, but that's just how it's set up in the section editor. We can do that if we want to increase it, to increase more spacing between each row, but I'm quite happy with that being quite compact. Likewise, if you wanted it so the button just feeds off directly off the bottom or with a 1 pixel border, once again, we can just adjust it So let's just put it for a 1 pixel border. A really subtle dividing option between those blocks. That's what I can do. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one here should be quite straightforward. We can get rid of the background block and restructure this, but this time we're going to set it up over 2 different text blocks and then move the button to the right. What I haven't done though on this one, which I need to do, is just check this on mobile before we go and move on to the next one. So here we've got some choices in terms of how we want it laid out. So we can go for this option, but if we're feeling that a lot of our image is being misplaced, we can put the button to the right, and also we can decide to move it down a little bit, or move it to the right and make that deliberately more compact. It's really up to you how you go about adjusting it to mobile, but we'll go with that. Always good to adjust your mobile effects as you go through it, because if you ever save it as a favorite, that save section feature is my favorite. I love it. But if you save it and then use it on other pages, it means you have to fix the mobile view on every single page. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to duplicate that one, bring that block down again. We've got 3 different heading hero styles now. This time, let's go for this structure. So I'm going to duplicate this block to start with. Should have got rid of the background actually before doing that. That would have helped. Yeah, so I'll get rid of that. I'll duplicate this. This is where I'm going to split up the title and the text block below. This title now, I'm going to change it to a heading 1. I'm going to bring it down here ready. This one, I'm going to try paragraph 1, but I might have to go bigger again. And we're almost certainly going to have to go with a stronger backdrop. Because a lot of the content's weighted to the left, I think what we can do is definitely go with a stronger overlay and flip that photo once again. So edit that photo, flip back to where it was. I'm going to increase the overlay opacity so everything's easier to read. If it's looking a little bit washed out, we could try the bright 1 color. And everything's coming out gold now, which is probably a bit much, but there's a quick fix that we can do to get that back to where we want it to be. Okay, so we can either have that on 1 or 2 lines. I think I quite like that on 2 lines. And we can adjust then the starting point for the content. So we can have that to the top. And now we're going to put the line in to see how everything balances out. So this line will go across the page, full width. We can see the grid doesn't go right the way to the edge of the screen. This is the content section. We lose control over the exact width of it the moment we snap it over to the edge. Now we can bring that line across the entire page, and then it will just extend either side. To make that slightly different to the other example, which stops either end, let's just keep that in place. Why not? Okay, so now we've got some decisions to make. Try and get it as good a spacing as uniform as we can. So we'll go with that, then bring this to the bottom. And the one thing I want to do now is just tidy up the spacing a bit. And what I'm going to do is get rid of the fill screen option. That makes us in full control now over the spacing at the top and bottom of this hero section. So we can decide where this content section comes in, and we can move our elements accordingly. There's no additional padding up top and bottom. Slightly more advanced option in Squarespace, but it gives us really good tight control over our layout. I do now double click on this, Command A to select all, and here I'm going to change that text to white. And I'll probably change the text to white for the heading as well. So we've got a nice balance now between the gold and the white. The line doesn't jump out quite as much. We could, of course, bring this back in, or we can have it cutting off on the left and going out to the edge on the right. Word of caution, if we were to bring the button over, we can see we've now got no control over its width. And if we were to change the width of the browser, we'd lose control of that even more. Let's go for maybe tertiary button style. No, we lose too much of that. Secondary, I think, is just the underline. So I think primary is probably the right one for that. Okay, so quite a narrow hero section, but it works quite well with that photo. Let's save as we got and just pop over to mobile and just fix this on mobile view. So we can see here there's quite a bit of work to do. And once again, we've got autonomy over what we want to do with this. Many designers have switched to mobile first, but because we get more editor options, styling options on desktop view, that's probably why I wouldn't recommend editing in mobile first on Squarespace. But the beauty of this is you can edit separately. So at the very least, mobile gets equal weighting. I'm really happy with that. Jump back to desktop view. Let's try and do at least one more. This one here, Polaroid type effect with a photo over top of a photo. This one could be interesting. Okay. I'm going to duplicate this one for this, I think. And just bring this blank section down. So we can start with a different starting point here. This is actually quite different in terms of how it's laid out. So I'm going to use this photo twice. I'm just going to duplicate it just for now, put it all the way across the background. So I snap it out to the edge. We're not using a background image in this section. Take it all the way to the edge and then all the way to this edge. For some reason, it's a real pain sometimes to get it to go all the way across. So my little hack for that is to drag it, he says, drag it to the right side first. Now drag it to the left, and for some reason it seems to work that way around. Not a major drama, once you know how to work it. Next up, we've got a shape. So let's add our shape block, and it's just a simple standard rectangle. And we might change this to the gold color to match our styling. And we've just got the title on this one, so no call to action button. No line needed either. So this has still got the text expansion option, which we can get rid of. And now we can put this over one line. Okay, we're getting there now. Now I'm going to overlap this image. It's underlapped it to start with, so we just need to move forward or press Shift and up to get that to the front. Just get this title down and out of the way first so it's not overlapping. Okay. Issue now is not letting me select that title for some reason. There's no logical reason why that's happening. It's probably just a little bug, which means I need to just give the browser a quick refresh. So making this image width, you can choose, of course, what the width for the Polaroid style image, but we want it nice and uniform either side. So I'm going with 3 grid columns that way, 3 that way. And then when you get it right, it rewards you with those gold lines. Think of them like gold stars being dished out by Squarespace. So I've got 2 options here. I can either overlap the image, which works, or I could change the gutter height settings here. I could put that down to 0 and that would work too. But I'm going to leave that because that does the job for me. Because I can't select that text, I'm going to save. Give it a full browser refresh. Yeah, I think we're going to be nearer 30 minutes than 15 minutes on this one. In fact, we already are. But we're having fun, hopefully. There we go. So now I can edit that text, move it around. And if I want it to fit a bit closer to that block above, I can increase the gutter height, or I could just make that a little bit bigger and align it to the center. And that's something I'm quite happy with. So all I'm going to do now is just take this background image, replace it, so we don't have the same image on both. Again, let's see if we can find something in the library that will do the job. There's quite a nice overlapping Polaroid effect. And now we can decide to move these up a bit more so we don't have so much empty space further up. And it's really up to you how much you bring it up into the section above. That background image is to provide a bit of texture and a bit of intrigue to the layout, so we don't need that to be front and center. It's all about this image here, which we're drawn to. One relatively new feature in Squarespace is we can apply an overlay effect on individual photos now. And we can choose a custom color, so go to black. I'll go for that gray, and I'm going to go for somewhere just about 60%. So it really does apply more focus now to the image that overlays it. Bring them up a little bit more. And just a bit of housekeeping at the bottom to get rid of all of that extra space. So from here, we've got two different options. We can either have the section below with the same background color, or we could expand this and add our text, for example, signposting, into this section here. I tend to like to break down Squarespace sites into multiple sections, so that's what I'm going to prepare for here. But I'm quite happy with that one. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, and I think we're going to do one more after this to wrap up. I'm going to save this layout, jump out of it, and we're going to just check it on mobile. This will need a bit of work on mobile, because Squarespace won't quite know what to do with it. We can allow a bit more height on this one, and the image is going to come across to the edge of the 24-column grid, or 12 on mobile, I believe. Yeah, it halves it on mobile. Move that there. We can go a little bit deeper with the photos. And the way that that goes freshly baked bread on one line works really well on mobile. Bring this up. A little bit of jiggery pokery to get it as we want. And we can set the position, top, middle, or bottom, separately on mobile and desktop. I don't believe we used to have the chance to do that, but that seems to be an addition with Squarespace, and a much welcome one as well. So that works quite nicely there, the way the background almost seems to blend in. And we've got that line there, which still does its job, just to add a bit of intrigue to the design. Okay, back to desktop. Let's do our final one to wrap up. Let's go take a look. Okay, similar to the last one, so we're going to be better off just replicating the one we just done. And now we've got one background image and like a grid gallery of 3 images going across. This one should be quite straightforward to do. So I'm going to duplicate this section because it's the closest one we got. I'm going to duplicate this blank section. Give us a bit more breathing space. Okay, first up. Get the image roughly to where I want. I can use Command C and D on a Mac, or Command D on the Mac, should I say, to duplicate those layers. I'm going to bring them down. I'm going to get rid of that background shape. And now I'm going to bring that text block over top. I said this one would be quite quick. Let's see what else we can do with this, because this is maybe a little bit too strong in the background. We could try some image effects. Maybe add a parallax on it. But what I think I'm going to do is edit this photo itself. And let's go to 16:9, get it cropped in roughly to where we want. So I'm going to have the bread cutting off from the top and coming in at the bottom with nice rounded edges. Then I go to the settings, and this time I'm going to take the saturation right down. The brightness right down, and the highlights make them less obvious. So we're going for a moodier color format for this now. This will hopefully make it less washed out with the overlay, but also make it blend to the background better. As you can see, it's not as bright now behind the text, and we can go to the design option once more. We can really ramp up the overlay effect so it doesn't start clashing and fighting with the 3 images below. Now, these images will be better if we replace them with different images in each one. So this is good if you need to tell a story over multiple images. And it helps if the photos are more part of a theme than maybe what I've got here. So I've got to check now that these are centrally aligned. It's got to work into the 24-column grid. So this format works quite well where we've got the extra spacing in between. But what we can do now is go into the section and
remove the gutter width down completely to bring them just a little bit closer together. Don't have to do that. Finally, I'm going to fix this one on mobile, then we'll wrap this up. I'm just going to make these photos a little bit more like 16:9 ratio, really. And we can see the gold lines on the outside. That means we've got it right. So we're once again rewarded with Squarespace version of a gold star. I'm going to put that text in below. In fact, what I'm going to do is move it above. So I hold Shift and select 3 photos so I can move them all down together. Now I can move the title up to the top, if it will let me move it. And I've got decisions to make. Shall I make it more centrally aligned like that? Yeah. I think I will. Okay, so the parallax effect works nicely on mobile and desktop. We've got this grid gallery effect. Then if we look at some of the others and how they're working on mobile, I think we got through quite a shift there. Hope you found this interesting. The next tutorial I'll be creating will be looking at the next series of layouts and how we can build them. If you start to feel that there's a repetition going through this, great. That's exactly what I want, because so much of working with Squarespace is about getting used to the automatisms, the flow that you go through as you start creating different layout designs. Okay, last time out, we built some of these beautiful hero designs. Hero sections are the billboards to our website. And so they need to be clean, to the point, with short, snappy messages, and usually a clear call to action. And all of these layouts are from SquareForge. I believe we got down to this one last time out, so this time we're going to pick up from here. And I'm going to build this card layout from the ground up. This one's going to be a really quick one. So let's just crack on. I'm going to add a new section, blank section. And now I'm going to duplicate this blank section above and below, just so we can give it a nice thick white border either side of them, so we know the area that we're working in. And I'm going to edit that section, put a background. I'm going to add a background from the library. So we're going to use the same photos wherever possible. It just keeps everything that little bit simpler to work with. There we go. I put that photo in place. I can increase the overlay opacity should I want to, but this one I'm not going to have any overlay. And if you didn't like the light grayed out effect, you can go to colors and change the color, which will change the overlay color on the background. So that's a bit darker that time, if you noticed. We can also go in and edit the photo, maybe make it black and white photo, so it's more of a watermarked background. But we're going to go with something like this. We've also got the option to switch it to inset if we wanted to keep a border effect. And I want to create a couple of hero sections with that style in mind. But for now, let's just go with this option with 0 overlay, because we're going to be using cards. Save me having to type. I'm going to copy that text, go to add a new block, the text block. I'm going to paste that in. And before I go out of that section and start editing it, I'm going to put the paragraph text in as well. Okay, starting to take shape. Quite like it clean like that. It's always great when we're working with hero sections when we've got details set off to one side. It means we can really work with the shape we're given. And I quite like that freshly baked bread over 3 different lines there. Okay. But that doesn't look like the example that I showed there, where we've got a card sitting to the bottom of the hero section. So let's stay on task, and I'm going to click this block once. If I click twice, it changes to the text editor, which is what we don't want. So I'll just click in once, and now add a background. Should have said at the start, this isn't a beginner tutorial. I'm assuming that you've used Squarespace a little bit, so you'll know your way around finding the essential tools. So this is more of an inspirational workshop than a how do we do the basics in Squarespace. If you are after doing the basics in Squarespace and getting to know all of these different blocks, on our website builders channel, there's loads of tutorials I've already created for the basics. And I've got a few more on the horizon too. So the next thing is we need to change the color of this block. So this card can be, and actually I'm going to make it large padding. And we're going to change it to the darker tones. Probably the darkest. Okay, now we've done that, we can make the text lighter. And we're quite like that. So what I can do is, instead of going for our usual colors, I could go to custom here and just bring this up to a level where I'm quite happy with the tone. Gives it quite an expensive, in the UK here, that Marks and Spencer's packaging feel to it. There we go. Silver on a slate grey backdrop. That never goes wrong, and it works really well with the background tones. So I'm happy with that. I could make the card a little bit broader if I wanted to. So we've got a bit of space to bring this over to the left more. If you're wondering why it's not sitting at the bottom, you might be getting frustrated about now, so I'm going to change the alignment to the bottom so this content grid structure sits to the bottom. But once again, it's not perfectly flush. So what we can do now, instead of actually using the alignment, we could just get rid of the fill screen, which gets rid of those options. And then we choose how large or how deep we want that hero section. Okay, so we've got that feature. There was just one thing remaining, and that was to add the bar across the top. So it's white in the SquareForge section, but now we're going to add a shape. Shorten that, bring it across. And we've got a bit of a gap there. So if we go to Edit section and get rid of all the gaps in the design, and we are starting to cook. One thing I want to do here is I went with just the large padding, and I really like the left and right padding, so I'm going to keep that as it is, but I can make it more compact top and bottom. Also, I can select this block. We can see it's aligned to the top. So if I align that to the center, or even better, align it to the bottom to give it more breathing space at the top. And now our first design is pretty much in place. Oh, what I am going to do though is make this line at the top the gold color. And we can go with the light gold. Now, see, now I want it in the silver with that, but I'll tell you what, we'll compromise. We'll make the title that gold color as well. I could play around with this for ages. I'm not, I promise. Before we move on to the next one, we're just going to head over to mobile view. And this time we've got some options. This has become larger than it needs to be, so I'm just going to make that nice and compact. And let's bring it down a bit. So we can see the bread there. The other option we've got is we can snap it over to the left. So it mirrors that kind of fixed onto the left-hand side. And that means we've got some of that texture coming down on the side there. I could, again, play around with this, get it exactly as I want. There's some issue with the padding, or certainly the spacing at the top, but we can see here these settings, alignment settings, are independent to the mobile view. I'm just wondering, is there yes, that's why. It was an extra space, an extra line in that paragraph that was causing the issues. So let's get this into the center. So we've got equal spacing, top and bottom. Much happy with that. So I'm going to press save, head back to desktop view. And now we've got it positioned nicely there. If anything, it's a little bit tight to the bottom. Ah, yes, that's again, because these are independent. So let's get that centrally aligned. Okay, now I'm happy, I promise. Let's move on to the next one. Oh, well, this one's going to be really easy. So we're going to adapt this one. I'm going to duplicate the white section, move it up. And now I'm going to take this block in the duplicated section. I'm going to remove the bar. And I'm going to make it a bit wider this time so it goes over one line. We're not going to go exactly to the other design. And we're going to fix it down there because it suits the heading style. So slightly different structure, but the whole point of SquareForge is if you purchase this, you can save any of these designs as favorites, bring them in as a starting point, and then they start to work with your designs. You sculpt them. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Maybe when you go and buy really nice pizza bases. I make my own pizza bread, but if you were to buy your own pizza bases, you put the toppings on that you want, and the pizza can taste very different depending on how you do it. Okay, got to work on my analogies a bit. But that's the second design. One thing I might want to do here, though, is actually switch the background. So if I go to Edit here, we did this in the last tutorial. Go to the Crop tool. So maybe double check it's 16:9, it is. And let's flip it horizontally so it comes in from the left. Usually when you flip anything, it looks a bit weird to start with. Obviously, keep an eye out if there's any text on there. And we can either go with that option to the left, or we can do this. And also we can snap it out right the way to the edge of the screen. But bear in mind, the width of that column will change depending on the width of your screen. Okay, we'll go with that. Offset, it fits that negative space really nicely there. So there we go, 2 nice designs to start with. Let's just check it on mobile. It probably won't work because we changed it. No, in fact, because it was largely like the other one, it actually works quite similarly on mobile. So let's just give it a bit more height, less width, and use that as our second design. Okay, save. I want to do at least one more. I'm going to have to start deleting some of these old ones now to give us a bit more space to work with. Okay, this time we've got the text block separate, we've got a line in between, and we've got the call to action button. I think we've already got one that does most of that, this one here. The reason I'm going to duplicate this instead of building it from the ground up. So I duplicate this white block again, gives us a bit of space. Yeah, the reason I'm not going to start this from scratch as a demo, because I've already created a tutorial on it, go and check it out. But also, all we've done really here is just add the elements. We just go to add block, we add a line, we add a text block and another text block below. The reason I didn't drag it from the right is I've got the record controls on the right, and that's causing me problems getting that to fit. Okay, so that line doesn't go across all the way, so I'm just snapping it. This is a 24-column grid in Squarespace. It used to be 12 columns, but as these content management systems and website builders have advanced, they give us more control over our designs, and it's a welcome addition, as we can do an awful lot more with our designs now. I'll bring that line over. Oh, that's looking nice. And we got the call to action button. So we're going to need to bring all of these items up. So if I click off them, because this is a background image, it's not affecting it. Click, hold, and drag over these, bring them up. And now our call to action button can slot in seamlessly underneath. How about that? I think that one was record time. Let's go on to mobile view. And here, I'm not going to look to change too much. I quite like the format there and the layout. Yeah, because that's looking a bit tight there. I think that works on mobile as is. Happy accident. How about that? Okay. Let's do one more. This one's even easier. We may even be able to do 2. Okay, this one's got an underline effect on our title. So again, we're going to go with the same design, duplicate it. I'm not going to worry about changing the background image because that will depend on what you're doing. Duplicate this section once more. I could actually save it as a favorite here so I can just add it in from save sections. It didn't save. Okay, let's try it again. There we go. So it saved that time. More haste, less speed. There we go. That's got that in place. So again, we've got the title. Put the underline under bread. Don't know why. So let's go with the same underline effect that we had there. Again, if I did that a bit quick and you've never seen these before, if you go to this underline button here, relatively new feature. It's been out for maybe 12, 18 months now, the time of recording this. And we've got loads of different options. I've used the circle option quite a bit. You've got standard lines, or you've got these lines as well. Then it's just a case of removing these extra lines, bringing our content in. Oh, I deleted the call to action button, but we can put that in as well. So we've got a full template here, and I'm going to create probably the top half of this and show how we can rapid prototype this using SquareForge as a starting point. Let's jump back to the Forge. I've already saved this as a favorite, kind of known what's coming up, so I cheated there a little bit. We've got our hero, and let's go through, and I'm just going to switch back and forth. This we can just build from the ground up. It's a case of realigning those headings. But this section here, let's have a look at signposting. This is where I can collapse the sections I don't need and jump down to signposts, and we're looking at 2-column classic probably. And we're finding something that's near enough to what we want. We can see that the image is offset to the left. So this is actually a layout I'm probably going to bring into SquareForge just to make this a little bit easier. And I'm probably going to use this one because it's a case of reshuffling this layout. I'll save that as a favorite. Jump back, look at the next section. So we want the testimonials now. And testimonials 3+. This one's in cards, but it's probably the closest we've got to that structure. So again, I'll save this as a favorite as well. Sometimes it does that. It's just not showing the option to save it. There it is. Little bug in Squarespace every now and again. Yeah, I think we'll stick it there. I might add a gallery below. I'll just ignore this section for now. And we'll add the gallery and see how we get on with that. It's under media, and we want a grid gallery. And we've got a few different options here. I think this was a row of 4. We've got a layout here as well. Okay. Although we're using the template as our guide for this, you could hand sketch a wireframe with a client. This is what we do at Pixel Haze Studio. And we will sketch this out on a chalkboard. Once we've got it sketched out, we then use the Forge to rapid prototype the build process for the layouts. And we do this with the client in the room. It just makes the whole process, in my opinion, that much more streamlined. Now we can add a blank page to our main navigation, and we'll call it home. And this is where we can set this as our home page. One thing you'll know, there's loads of footer designs here, so it would be a case of just choosing one. But what I'm going to do just temporarily, I'm just going to remove the footer from the design, just so we can focus without any distractions. Now when I click Edit and go to Add Section, we can see our saved sections are already in place. Because I selected the hero first, that will be in the bottom right-hand corner. We've got our signposting, then we've got our testimonials, and then I know I've skipped a section, but we'll put our gallery in as well. So there we go, the wireframe of a layout similar to what we've got as a starting point. But here's where I'd recommend using SquareForge and not just happily sticking to that, but now we can really start to work with it. Let's remove that image, edit this image here. We've got image effects that we can apply to it, but for now I'm just going to replace this swatch. The reason I put simple monochrome swatches in place is this will just help with the load speed, also the replication speed, so it's not bringing so many assets into your asset library as well. Everything just becomes that much quicker. So now that's in place, we can upload a photo, select from a library of already uploaded images, upload from mobile, which is a handy feature, but also we've got the option to browse stock images. And we've got free images via Unsplash, and we've got premium images via Getty. For this demo, we'll just search for cafe. And there we go, we've got that image there that we could use, or we could change it up a little bit. And I think that's what I'll do. So now it's just loading and dropping that image in place. If it doesn't fit to frame, go to design and set it to fill. Sorry, I had it the wrong way around. We want it to fill the frame, not fit. Fit would keep the aspect ratio. And as we can see now, we've lost some of that shape in terms of it going to the edges. So I go back to fill and that looks really nice. And so therefore we've already got that in place. Looking good. We could add a shape in here. And this is where you can really customize the layouts as you see fit. Drop this behind, and of course we can't see it yet, but you could have a 1 column frame around the outside to really get that Polaroid effect in place. Now because this border is thicker than this one here, there might be something that we can do. We can bring it down 2, and now that's fitting nicely. Again, 1, 2 on the bottom, meaning we're going to probably need to expand the size of this area. We need to anyway because of the text that we want to bring in. I try to avoid having welcome as my welcome text on the website because it's kind of lost retail space for something that's blatantly obvious. But for the sake of this demo, I'll just do that. And I've also put some Latin placeholder text just to give our layout some structured content. Okay, so that's looking okay so far. I think I'm going to go for the same type of effect here. We will go for a textured backdrop, like on that image there. So we're looking at stone wall. Okay, not really the effects that I want. Yeah, but something like that. So it has a texture, but nothing too dramatic. Something that fits in with the tone of the image as well. We'll see what it looks like when it loads. So that's maybe a little bit too grainy, a little bit too grey. So let's edit this and see what we can do. First of all, because of the ratio of that backdrop is kind of a widescreen layout, so we can go to custom. We don't need to have all of this image loading, so we can speed up the loading time by just focusing on that middle section. and that will make it a smaller image size. Go to filters. We can put more of a golden filter on it. That's taking it too far. But if we reduce the strength, this just saves us from taking it into Photoshop or Canva and editing the image in there. As long as we've got something roughly to what we want, that can help with that. And then maybe we can reduce the contrast and the brightness a tiny bit so that there's not quite as much texture. The texture isn't quite as strong in the backdrop, if that makes sense. So it's just good to play around with some of these options till you get a feel that you're quite happy with. You can see it's quite different to that version there, and something more in line with the texture on this building. I think that's a smoother texture, more of a sandstone finish, but we'll go with that option there. As we can see already, this looks very different, not only in relation to the original template, but also when we compare it with our template here. And this is where I would recommend jumping over to mobile view, because things like this frame won't be sitting quite right. So we just need to go in and just fix this up. If we hadn't changed anything structurally from the template, we wouldn't need to do this. But because the SquareForge template has been adjusted, we just need to adjust those as well, but still not a huge amount of work needed to be done. We could take these sections here and bring them in even more. And actually, I think I prefer that. And I think we're going to have less of an overlap, so the texture comes in behind, meaning we're not losing all of that retail space here at the top. So once I'm happy with that, I can just bring up the bottom of that section, jump back to desktop view, and see how it's all fitting together. Okay, moving on to the next section, we can see that one thing we had here was quite a strong color behind. But what I'm going to do instead of this one is change the color of this section. SquareForge is set up with a monochrome layout, so I could go through the style options here and change the colors, and by the time I do that, it will look very, very different. But this is where we've got more of a structural challenge. You can see we've got an image offset to the left, and then we've got actually shapes here to create that tab section. So let's edit this first. I've got two options here. I can either resize them to be the same size, or I could get one of these sections finished and then simply duplicate this to the next section. But instead I'll do it manually, just to show you how it all works. Something to be mindful of, this text block goes all the way to the edge. We need to bring it back in, because that can look quite unsightly there, having it going all the way to the edge. Just get that fitting again. And move our button up into position. Because this is more text on this side than this one, I'm just going to cheat a little bit and get them roughly the same number of characters. When you're editing or writing copy for a website, you've got control over that, and sometimes I'll use ChatGPT to work with some of the writing I put together and just make it fit better across the board. Sometimes Squarespace does this where it stretches the images down and makes it more quirky, but that's fine. Now we've got the image in place, let's go and put the shape. If I can find it, down here. And now we can set this to white. And send it to the back. Once we've done the first one, I'm going to make that text block wider, just so that we've got more breathing space with it. But what I can do now, finally, is just go to the edit section and increase the gap between each of the rows. And we can compensate for that gap, I think, by, if I just move this up one, like this. But what I can also do is bring this white container behind the photo. So we get an edge-to-edge finish, but we still got some nice breathing space in between each of those signposts. Bring the bottom up so we've got some relatively equal spacing. We've got some nice white space there, and that section's starting to look better. Now we can look at the signposts, change these to content that matches. So there we go. We've got our signposts with the call to action button and ready to add our images. So again, same process. I shouldn't really be so fussy. This is just a placeholder image. I'm just going to go for that, even though it doesn't really fit the whole light bytes option. But we'll just go with it. There we go. So hopefully you see it all really starting to take shape. And now finally, we could just update these testimonials. If I go to edit content, we can go via this section here and just replace the image. So let's just find some random people from these headshots. By adding this in, we might just need to change the focal point. Again, replace, write a stock photo. Unfortunately, it doesn't remember your choices from last time. So I just need to do it 2 more times. I just copied and pasted the text this time. Okay, now those are in place. I'm just going to save it there, because I don't really want to go through that process again. And we can see there's only 3 testimonials. There's no arrows to flick through them. We'll leave the testimonials title. We'll leave those as placeholders. Obviously, we can see then we can update the settings. The 5-star rating looks quite nice on here, so I'll keep that in place. Again, if we go back to edit content, and if we go to design, if we go down to style, we've got card switched on. So if I remove that, we can see now that it's looking more akin to the other version. And finally, if we go to size and space, we might just reduce the content width and set it to inset instead of full width. It'll just give it a bit more structure around those testimonials. Obviously with the cards, we've got more breathing space to work with, so we can go full width with those. But with this, I prefer this structure. Okay, we're getting there now. I think finally with this section here, I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to, nope, I need to go to edit section, go to colors, and I'm going to choose one of the dark mode options for that. Finally then, I could just update these and change the photos, but I won't do that in the tutorial because it's such a straightforward thing. Again, you just delete these and upload your photos in place. But hopefully that's given you an idea of how we can relatively quickly take our SquareForge layout and give it some life. Final step, I'm going to go to the style option here. I'm not going to worry about the fonts, but we are going to change the colors. And so what I'm going to do, just to keep it really straightforward, is I'm just going to pick a color palette from the existing site. Not a great color palette, actually, that Squarespace have given us. That orange is too light to have the second to bottom color. So I think we'll go with that option here. Not so much to edit. I always like light or white or just off-white to be my lightest color. So I'm going to edit this color palette here. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with a much lighter color. Almost like a stone color there to match the rest. And this is where it all looks rather different. There's probably some work to do. For example, this color here, the text is a little bit too light there. And let's pick a different color pack. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. And we're going to change this color as well to make it a bit lighter. So if we go to here, what we want to be doing is going from light to dark as we go through them. I'm not overly impressed with Squarespace's own color selection here. They've got very talented designers there, but I feel that this is just a bit too limiting when we're choosing the color packs. But if we go back to this edit section here, let's just see if we can find one that works. There we go, dark one. This text may all look a bit too much the same. And I definitely want to do some work with the line spacing in particular with that particular font. But that's where it comes to the editing next, which would what happened next. In SquareForge, I changed the color, obviously, so it could be seen over the background. So there's some work to do here, just to bring the colors back in. Just a little bit of tweaking needed. And definitely some work to do on the button styling. But there we go. A very different looking website.
We're going to take this design here and convert it to something that looks more akin to this section here. So we're going to go with rounded corners. We're going to go with rounded buttons. Although I'm not sure actually if I can make the buttons rounded because you update them via the overarching style. We're also going to have an image fit in perfectly at this top section with the rounded corners. If you want to go with straight edges because it better suits your style, then of course you can make all of the edges squared off without any problems whatsoever. If you're interested in seeing how I created this demo design, I actually created a tutorial. I think it was a live session. Again, I'll try and dig out a link for you, where I took this design by one of our community students, Sherry, who's working on her very first Squarespace site. She actually managed to get this one live all off her own back, which is mightily impressive in such a quick turnaround. By joining the community, she has given me a really nice case study, so I was able just to spend an hour on it and show how we could make the design more interactive. Of course, this is still a demo, so things like the navigation don't work properly. There's a few things that I would have changed. If you're interested in that video, if you go to our live sessions on the Website Builders channel, you'll find it there. And yeah, it really breaks down how I came up with some of these concepts, going with slightly larger images that make better use of white space. I've been doing this for 20 years. It comes naturally to me now without having to think too much about building page layouts. But the important thing is this is actually built on SquareForge as opposed to from the ground up, meaning that we can cut some corners and get the designs in place much, much quicker. With that all in mind, let's have a look at creating this section. So I've gone onto the 4-column signpost, and if we look at the original example, we've got 4 columns here. If I've got time today, I'm going to try and adapt this to a 3-column layout to show you how that works as well. I'm going to build it from the ground up. The reason being is if I was to use the Square Websites Chrome extension tool, Square Websites Tools Pro, which I'm a huge fan of, it will allow me to take a section from one Squarespace website and copy and paste it into another. The only downside to that, in this case, is it will bring all the image assets across, so I'd have to go through and manually delete them. I know that makes a very trivial, small thing seem more laborious, but I thought I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone and actually talk you through the process of how I would build this layout from the ground up. It'd be great if you were to take a look at SquareForge and see if it's suitable for you, but if you don't want to make the purchase, this is how you build it. I need to go to the SquareForge master. This is squareforge.net, which is the live website. So we're going to just take that down. And this is our master template. So from today, this will be available and tested in this tool. In the left-hand menu, I'm going to go down to signposts and 4-column classic. I'm not going to start from scratch. What I'm going to do is try and find an example that, this one here, has all of the elements in that I need. And I'm going to adapt this one. I'm going to click Edit. I'm now going to duplicate the section. And if we were building this completely from scratch, what I'd be doing is adding an image block, adding a text block, a line, and these are all available via the Add Block option here. So if I wanted to add a line, in fact, I will build it from the ground up. I did promise that at the start, so let's keep to our promises. I'm going to move that down because we're going to use that same content. Save me having to write in just dummy placeholder text. I'll just drag that into place. But for structure, I can just copy this. So we're going to go to add a new image. I'm going to get roughly the size that I want. We can see the gaps here are pretty good, the gutter widths. Then we can go and add a text block. I'm not going to worry about the styling at the moment, but what I will do is actually copy this text and paste it in ready. Now it's cheated, which is great for me, but that doesn't really help you. So I'm just going to put it back to paragraph 2 and left align, which will be the default option when you go to add new content. I'm going to duplicate that block, save me having to rebuild it every single time. And I'm going to leave a gap where we're now going to add a line in between. I'm just going to leave it there for now, and we'll work on all of the spacing all together. Final option, we can add a button. Again, I'm not going to worry about the size or spacing of that button just yet. So we've got our elements in place. It's not looking very pretty at the moment, but we need to add one more,
And that is going to be a shape that goes behind the entire container. But I'm going to leave that till last. Double click within this text block. Command A on a Mac or Control A on a PC to copy all of that text. And I'm going to drop it in to this content area here. Again, it's automatically centrally aligned, but you can change the alignment by selecting the text, go into left, center, right, or justify. I'm not a fan of justify in web. I think the spacing works well in books, publications where there's lots of print per page and the print size is quite small. But on websites, we want the content to flow. I much prefer left aligned or centrally aligned. The rule of thumb is generally, if there's not too much content, short widths and only a handful of rows, that can work centrally aligned. More than that, and especially if you're going over multiple paragraphs, make both of those paragraphs left aligned. That's just one trick to keep your website user-friendly from day one. I'm now going to align that heading to the center, and I believe it was a heading 4. There we go. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. So you can see how I managed to get the spacing of this better, because if I bring the line up, it's going to be too tight to that title. This is just a little hack, a little workaround. I'm moving that content block up closer to the image, but now it's too close to the image, if that makes sense. The spacing is pretty grim. And I'm going to make that line shorter so it doesn't go across as far. I'm going to move this block up below. So that's starting to look better. And this time, I'm actually going to take this text block, click on it once, as opposed to what I did there was clicking the text, and you can see you've got the text editor options. We don't want that. We just want to click on the text block once, away from the text area, and we get a different menu. And at the moment, it's aligned to the top, but we can align it to the bottom. Now, by default, your text block, when you add a new one, might be aligned to the center, for example. So it's just using the alignment. So what we've got then is extra white space above the title, slightly less than below, but then those 3 blocks become nicely balanced. It can take a little while, and I've had feedback from students who just getting used to Squarespace, just to remember where all the features are, like for example, to click once to choose the alignment options, which is different to the text blocks option. The best way to learn this is just through practice, have a play around with it, get used to it by working with it. This button style is wrong. So if we go to, say, secondary button style, and then if we click on this pencil icon again, we can go to design, and we can change it to fit. Okay, we can see that's not the same button style. So let's go for tertiary, and there we go. The fit allows a more balanced button sometimes. The spacing's preset. Even if we go across 2 blocks, we can see it doesn't expand all the way across. So it's a neater looking button when we're going for a smaller one like that. And we can see this one spans the full width of the block, and there's absolutely no harm in doing that here as well. Now we've got most of our button in place, we've got our image in place. Now's a good time to have a look at putting in a container behind that entire column. I'm going to go to add a new block again, and we're going to go with shape. And we're going to just drag it over the entire block at the moment. We're going to change it so it goes right to the back. And we're also going to go into the pencil icon, and we're going to change the color. So this is the color palette. It's monochrome on SquareForge for the deliberate reason that the moment you start bringing colors in, it starts to look more suitable for certain types of sites than others. So monochrome is just a really good template color palette to work from. But what I'm going to do is select one of the palette colors. And now I'm going to change the opacity right down to 0. So we can't see any of that block. And we're going to add a stroke. The stroke color will be white. And at the moment it's medium. If you want chunkier borders and that suits your design, like that, you can of course keep it in like that. For this particular design, I want it pencil width. Sometimes it can be a bit fiddly because you can see the text block ends there, the button starts there. So there is a gap in between where we can click in that to select the shape behind. Otherwise, we'll end up selecting each text block or maybe the line option. So just find a spot where we know that there isn't another block, and we can hover over it. We can see these blue boxes, and we know then we're selecting the shape. Again, we'll go back into the pencil icon, and from here, let's go to the stroke option and go for either small, or we could even just drop it down to 1 pixel border by that option. And we've got additional options here. We've got a drop shadow option, which again can work really nicely for a subtle shadow effect. Because we're on a black background, that won't work on this particular design. But we could change it up in future and have a dark color like a slate gray and then have just a slight shadow on that. It would lift each signpost from the page. I'm not going to add that in. We'll just keep that as is at the moment. We can see here now we've got the rounded corner options. So I can either round one corner individually or I can round all corners. And I'm going to go with 20 pixels. The stroke color, I put it right the way down to 0 pixels, which is why we can't see it. So I just need to bump that up to 1. And we can see it's starting to take shape now, but it's not perfect. We can see the rounded corners here aren't cutting into this image correctly. So let's add an image. This will just be a colored swatch, because again, we try to avoid using photos because it means when you set up the SquareForge, one is it looks nice and neutral, so when you add your photos, it really comes to life. But secondly, it's much quicker to set up. There's not the same number of assets to bring across into your version of SquareForge, meaning that the installation process is so much quicker. I'm going to set this to fill, so it goes right the way to the edge of the container. And this time, instead of selecting all corners to be rounded, I'm going to select the top left and top right. Again, we memorize the setting we had before. So it was 20 and 20. There we go. We have now created or mirrored this effect here in here. Of course, we can adjust the height. So if we want more of the image, if it's a 4:3 ratio as opposed to 16:9, we can bring that image down and then move everything else down to fit it. But I think I'm going to leave it like that. And now I'm going to move these down. And now we're going to have the fun of working with this on mobile view. So I'm saving it, jumping over to mobile view. And we can see we've got a little bit of work to do to tidy this up. The reason I haven't created the other blocks or replicated the other ones first is because it's much easier to position one properly first and then move on to the others. Take that right to the back. Bring that block up. And now I'm going to move the text blocks into this container and move the container down to give us a bit more breathing space. I can always make it shorter afterwards and just start to align things. Here I could bring the text blocks in one either side, but then it starts to become really cramped. So I'm going to change the setting here. That will help. I'll do it in just a moment. That will help both the desktop and mobile view to give it a bit more breathing space. But first of all, let's get the spacing right. And it doesn't have to be exactly like for like between desktop and mobile. We really should be looking to customize it to suit each option. So I want it, so you see the gold line, meaning that that's centered within the design. And I think on mobile view, I'm going to have this more compact. That's aligned to the top. So again, I'm going to move that up and try it aligned to the bottom. And we can see that that's better spacing. That's starting to look good. The only thing we don't like is the lack of white space either side of this container here. I'm going to move the Learn More button down a bit more because it's going to come down over another line anyway. We're going to save this, hop back over to desktop view. And we can see that's largely looking pretty good there. We're going to select this text block once. And we're going to style the background. There's no background on this at the moment, so we're going to cheat by adding a background. Then we're going to choose the background color, and we're going to put it down to 0. There's an invisible background color behind that. But what this allows us to do is change the padding. And we can remove the padding top and bottom because we want to keep that spacing. And then we can go left and right. So I'm going to go to, say, 8 or 10%, something like that. I've got 9% there. Sometimes when we put a background on it, it will change the color of the text. So we just need to go through and just change that back. Move that Learn More button up. We can then move the container up. But this is where we just fine tune it to our requirements. I need to find a section again where there's no content in behind it. And I think that's what I'm going to settle with. That's desktop view sorted. Save it again. Let's jump back to mobile view. And now we've got our template in place to work from. Back to desktop. This time, it should be much quicker to wrap this up. I'm going to select all of these elements here, duplicate them, bring them across. and I'm going to bring the content into play. So again, copy that text here. Little trick here that will save you hassle of having to restyle it. I'm going to select everything after the first character. Then I'm going to remove that first character. That keeps all the text styling consistent. Otherwise, Squarespace will do its own thing with the text, and goodness knows what we end up with it looking like. Sometimes this will happen, so I'm Command A to select all and just put all the text back to white. So that's the second block done. We can select this one, duplicate all items together, and now bring in our third column. Exactly the same process. So I didn't actually put it after the first character, but it didn't seem to change that text size. Because it's set as paragraph 2, it's remained consistent. So you could try that, see if that works. But with the titles, we almost always need to do that properly. Coaching and mentoring, final one. Let's get this in place. And again, I'm doing this before I put the links in the buttons or do any individualization to each of the blocks, simply because it becomes easier to do that afterwards once we've got the structure in place and checked on mobile. Okay, so this is where we got our first inconsistency. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to just edit that text down so it fits with the others. In a real-world environment, I would recommend doing the same thing, tweak the content so it's roughly the same length, so we end up with consistency across, or make all containers deeper, so bring them all down so it suits the latest one. But we will end up with bigger gaps then, like in this one here, between the content and the text. When working in web, it's always a fluid design, which means that we have to design with that mindset. It's not like designing a brochure where we can get everything pixel perfect exactly as we want. We just cannot do that in web. Different browsers, different screen sizes will all adjust how everything looks. Now, if we go to mobile, there'll be issues with spacing in between them, but that's much quicker to update than having to move all of these blocks on every single one on mobile view. And believe me, if you were to do it the other way, where you build all 4 blocks and then go to mobile view, you'll end up with a much messier layout to edit. So do them one at a time, then duplicate, get them in position on both desktop and mobile so they're all looking really nice. And that's when you'd individualize things like the buttons and even the content style.
We're going to design this card effect layout, yes, including drop shadows on each of these blocks. So we can put icons or images into these little windows. I've left them completely free at the moment just because we use this as a starting point and then we flesh out the content. Before we start building this, there's a couple of caveats. One is we're looking at 3 lines of text for our summary at most, and up to 2 lines of text in our title, so that we don't end up having to increase the height of all of these cards. Of course, that's an option, so that they're all nice and uniform. We're not going to worry so much about the left-hand side. We're just going to work on this card layout here. And I'm going to show you the easiest option first, that requires a subscription to the Square Websites Chrome extension, which is actually bundled into our Squarespace Designer Power Pack. That includes everything, including this SquareForge, a huge collection of starting templates that you can use on any Squarespace site. I've left a link in the description for more information about that. But the second part of this tutorial is I'll show you how to build all of this from the ground up, so completely free, providing you have an active Squarespace subscription. And this needs to be Squarespace 7.1 as well. So we're going to copy that section. This is using the Chrome extension. I need to be logged into the admin for that to work, and to make sure that I've got the extension enabled once it's installed. So at Chrome extension, you search for Google Chrome extension or the Square Websites Tools Chrome extension. So I've done a quick search for Square Websites Chrome extension, and in the Chrome Web Store, we can see we've got that option to install it. I've already got it installed, so I don't need to do anything else at this stage. And then you can sign up to a subscription for the Pro version. That will give you so much to work with. So we're going to copy that section. I think I already have. So now we can go to our test page and we can choose, without going into the edit view, we have this pull-up window, and then we can insert that section. It does come with a disclaimer that it's not perfect. And we can see here that there are some issues with the cards. That might be permanent, that might be temporary. Most of the time, it does it bang on. We have a perfect transition across. But see, there's quite a few assets in this type of design because it's more advanced, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer. There we go. So that's been inserted. I've not shown you the best example using this extension. But if I just refresh the page, does it allow the cards? Yeah, we can see they've come back in now. I think some of those effects just needed a refresh. But what we can see is the drop shadow color has changed. So it's picked up from the color palette on the site. So we just need to just go through and change that. What I'm going to do now, though, is disable that extension. I'm going to show you quickly how to tidy up this version. So we can jump in and edit it. And we can see the different layouts here that we just need to reorganize this. Squarespace does some kooky things sometimes with different layouts. Yeah, so we've got the rounded corner buttons there. The only thing with this is all of our buttons are rounded, so that might cause problems. But that's essentially how we go through and work on this particular layout. We could make this centrally aligned here to have the button floating in each of the blocks. And what we're going to do with our designs, that's slightly different to the other one, is we're going to go in and edit them. We'll change the drop shadow, of course. We can even go to custom and let's choose like a light gray silver effect. But we're going to keep it monochrome in this particular example. So once we've done that, we can see now that we've got our new drop shadow. We might have to just change the angle. We go to the card is dropping at the bottom. And then just a case of a little bit of fine tuning and working around it then. The vast majority of layouts we bring across from SquareForge work from the offset. But some of the more advanced ones require a little bit of fine tuning to get them to work as we want. Squarespace seems to do this with text blocks. I have no idea why it just makes them twice, 3 times as long in some cases than they need to be. It's a really frustrating little bug that's been in Squarespace for a while. But anyway, that's how we can do it more efficiently, more quickly. Let's just show you how we do it from scratch. And we're going to add a blank section. Now let's go with the darkest format. So we're going to do a high contrast night mode version of it. So let's have a look here. This is what we're copying, but we're going to adapt it to fit. Sorry, this is what we're going to copy, but we're going to adapt it to fit the styling of our site, which means rounded corners on just about everything. So to start off with, I'm going to add in a text block. And I'm going to copy this text from here and paste it in. So far, so good. Now we're going to add a shape. And this shape is going to be not the darkest color, but just lifting off it slightly. So I'm going to edit it. And what you'll see is I'm going to do one first. I'm going to get that right before we start duplicating them. We're also going to test that one in mobile before doing anything else. So with that shape added, I can use this button here to move backwards. And we can just move it right the way to the back until that option becomes grayed out. Now we can start shaping the block as we want. I think maybe we'll go with 3. So I'm just going to duplicate this. I know I said we're going to work on one on its own to start with. I'm just doing this to get an idea of the right width so we can have 3 uniform designs. Yeah, I think that's our size. And I'm going to make this paragraph 3 potentially, just to make the text a little bit smaller. And we're going to bring it in one from the side. Okay, so the first thing we've got is I don't really want to give it too much space. But I also don't want the text to the edge of this block. So there's a little workaround. We can add a background, but make that background transparent. Or just to be on the safe side, we can make it the same color and transparent. And then we can add some padding to the left and the right. So we can manually adjust the padding that goes around that text area. The only thing we have to do now is change the color of that text. And now we've got the change of color. I'm going to align that text to the center of the block. So we're looking at some good consistent spacing above and below. We're still got to put the button in, so I probably need to do something with that. So in fact, let's just put it top line for now. And we also need to add our image. Oops, didn't mean to press gallery. So let's delete that. Now add our image block. So now we've got some options. What I'm going to do differently here is I'm actually going to add a photo into the section. So we're not going to use just a color swatch card. Let's use this astronaut here. And that's a square image. So we can use the image editor here if we want to manually crop images to square. That gives you the best control and also the best load time on that photo, because we're not loading, if it was a portrait image, we're not loading a section that is cropped out of this photo, but still there as part of file size. So that's one thing we can do. We can also, let's set the shape to a circle. Yeah, we're going to go with circle. And we're going to bring this out so it comes out closer to the text. What we can also do is increase or reduce the height of that circular image. And then look at our spacing. And if we go to this option here, let's get rid of the top and bottom padding altogether. And let's make this bold. Okay, now we've got to this circular image aligned to the center of that block. So there's good even spacing around it. We've used the background styling on this text block to give us nice breathing space left and right for that. And now we're going to add in a button below. A lot of this is just about playing around with it until you get an effect that you're happy with. I've really got to start pressing the right options, don't I? So let's go and add that block again, and this time we're going to click on button. And we're going to look at the different styling options that we've got in our site. They're all rounded corners. So with that in mind, let's go for the outline effect. I'm going to make it quite a small style button, but that's way too chunky. So what we can do in here now is go to the pencil icon, design, and maybe get it to fit the frame as opposed to filling it. That's still quite a big, heavy button. But with Squarespace, we've got the option to choose our button style. So what I could choose is definitely the second button and make it more compact, but that will affect the rest of the site, and I've got everything laid out as I want. So I'm not going to worry too much about that particular aspect. So what I am going to do in this case instead is get it to fill the frame. And then we can make it narrower. But the way I would work on it is just work on that spacing in the button styling options as opposed to editing it here, because that's a little bit cramped for what I want, but it'll do for now. So before we go and edit this on mobile, let's have a look at the outline on it. So go to the pencil icon. Let's switch this to 20 pixel border radius. See how that looks. Just takes the edges off the frame, but that's still not really standing out a huge amount. We can add the drop shadow. It's not going to be as obvious. I'm going to put this as a black drop shadow and make sure it's on 100%. Yeah, it's really not having that effect because of the dark background. So let's instead go with this color layout. We're going to have to change the color of the text. We can try it with blue cards. Let's try that. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. This time we're going to change the color to the navy color. Again, a little bug in Squarespace. Sometimes we have to do them separately. In fact, I'm going to go with the darkest color. This is why I suggest working on one card first. Get it right exactly as you want it. Because our button now has changed color. And that's something we've got to work with. The reason it's doing this, that's what the default color is for that particular palette, so dark 1. What I can do with dark 1 is whenever there's this navy, we can change the button style into white background when on a navy backdrop. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I can do is look for buttons. Okay, so primary button background, we can see it's the blue, so let's change that to the white. Now we're cooking. Okay. Happy with the button text color. Again, I can go and style this in the button styles to adjust the padding accordingly. But I think for now, we'll go with that because we need a color that will work on both the card and on the backdrop. I could always go in and work on with a custom code. I've got a block identifier here. That's free. Again, another Chrome extension. This one's free to use, called Squarespace ID or Block Finder or Identifier. If you search for that, you'll find various tools like this. So we could copy that block reference number and then add some custom CSS. If you're comfortable using custom code with Squarespace, it means you can target the background color for this and do whatever you want with it, really, including the spacing for this particular use. But we'll go with that. It's not perfect, but it's fine for what we want. I'm in an hour in which one is the best approach here. I think I'm going to go with a slightly larger image in that circular frame. Right now, I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. Let's just go in and reapply this drop shadow effect. And we can tweak with the angle, the distance, and the blur effect to get something that we're quite happy with. It's very subtle. It's just about picking up on this screen, but it may not on yours. But this would work better if we went on a lighter background, and it would be more obvious. But believe me, it is there. So before we duplicate this and we wrap up this tutorial, I'm going to go to mobile view, and now we can see it's all over the place. So we need to build this out for mobile as well. Drag our astronaut in. Make sure we bring this text layer to the front. Again, because we've got the padding on that text block, we can adjust it accordingly. And find this button somewhere now. There it is. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that button styling, but we'll go with it. So that's one of the challenges we've got now, is just getting that to fit. This is probably what I want it to be, where it's just in a grid layer, but we can see the spacing there is a little bit out. One option we could do is for it to go larger across the bottom, but narrower height. And I think that's what we'll do for now. I would probably use some custom code on these blocks just to get them perfectly spaced. Not really happy with that, if I'm being honest. Let's get this image in one. I think that's probably a bit too cramped, so we'll stick with that. Okay, once we've done that once, and we've got the card design that we're happy with, back to desktop, where it shouldn't change anything, and now we can duplicate this section across. It's now a case of doing this twice. What I should have done earlier as well is just work on the spacing, because this will impact the rest of the design. What I often do is just put the other card next to it before fine-tuning on mobile. And the reason I do this is once we've adjusted these content width sections, it will change the overall look and feel of the layout. So if we went for 20 horizontal spacing between each block, that has now changed how the design looks. I'm just going to remove these two once more. Double check this one on mobile. That's still working okay. Now we select everything in that block, duplicate it, and bring our card across and duplicate it again. Once we're done with that, we can duplicate them down, grid row, and we can adjust the height with spacing as well. So the gaps height-wise to get these more in line, but it will affect everything else, as we can see here. But we can make the widths and the heights uniform, especially if we go up to, say, 25 widths.
If you're intrigued about finding out more about SquareForge and you'd like to learn with myself and my team how you can create professional looking websites on website builders like Squarespace, then you may want to consider joining our school community. That's school with the K, and the best news is SquareForge is going to be included within that subscription. You have SquareForge plus every single update available, our full 6-week transformation program to become a professional Squarespace web designer, and all of the tips and resources in our Pixel Haze Academy library. Going further than that, myself and my team will be available with with some tips or guides. Our aim is to overload you with quality and value, and there's info in our description to join the waitlist. Let's get back to the video. In this tutorial, we're going to take this template and turn it into a fictional design for a local family bakery. So I'm going to click Edit and jump into Squarespace. And the first thing we're going to do is actually remove the footer sections that we don't want. So click in there once and we can see now that we can remove them one at a time. In our footer, we're going to want to have a map, maybe a photo, and opening hours and contact details. So I think we're going to go with this one here. We can tweak it if we want to. What I'm going to do now is just remove the ones that I don't want and leave the section that I do. This is probably the most repetitive job we're going to have in the entire process. One thing we can't do at the present with Squarespace is save a section as a favorite. I'm not going to upload a logo, we're just going to use a font in this case. So I'm just going to remove that and we're going to update these details afterwards. Okay, so now we've got our footer in place. There's a bit of extra spacing here that I don't want. For now, I'm just going to click on Edit Section and we're going to remove the fill screen option. That should get rid of the extra spacing around it. If it doesn't, it may just need a full refresh. There's a little bug there in the system. But what we're going to move on to now is the color palette. So I'm going to go to Site Styles, click on our colors here. We can see it's monochromatic. We've got some options here that we could choose. One thing that's important is we go from light to dark. So we've got the lightest options on the left and the darkest, therefore, as you would expect, on the right. We're going to instead customize this and we're going to have more control over how it looks. So this is where I'm going to bring the palette forward and we can see the lightest options here. I've got a ColorZilla Chrome extension. This is on Chrome, but it also is available on Firefox. And I'm selected those colors. So I'm going to leave the one to the left as white. I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to copy and paste my colors. So what this does is it copies the hexadecimal values for the colors. And what we're doing is we're going from lightest to darkest. So I've got a decision to make now. I can either add this one and leave out the burgundy color or the red color. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I like to have minimal color options. So what I might do is just make this one a little bit lighter so there's more differentiation between that and the color across from it. We can see it's got a hint of blue in that color, which is quite nice. So we'll keep that. And we're going to go back and we're going to select the darkest color now, which I really like, which will replace the jet black that was in the original SquareForge layout. If you are new to SquareForge, you don't know what it is, it's a rapid template builder for Squarespace that I've built over the past 12 months, but it's based on concepts we've been using for a lot longer than that. It allows us to go through and build Squarespace websites 30 to 40% faster in some instances, as I'm hoping to demo today. Now we've got our color palette in place. Actually, let's just choose the font selection as well. So I'm probably going to choose a font pack. I think I'm going to go for this one here. Because it's going to be for a family bakery, we want it with quite a friendly, approachable font selection. And we're going to go with serif fonts, like a modern serif font for the headings, and then a sans serif font without all of the funny little details for the paragraph content. Press save. Now our color palette and our font selection are in place. Now we can go and look at the different content structures. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll bring up squareforge.net so we can see them before we change the colors and the fonts to start with. So we can see here we've got different hero designs that we can use. So hero sections are our big billboards or banners at the top of our website. And we can save these as favorites and then bring them into our homepage design. So something like this, where we could put a full background photo behind it. And it's just got a nice introductory section. We've got the centrally aligned option there, but there's loads to choose from. We've got it broken down into loads of different options. There's over 300 templates that we can use and adapt to our own requirements from here. Everything from membership tables through to signposts, contact blocks, content blocks, pretty much everything you need to build websites quickly. And they're all tested and working on mobile. So this is how they look on the default option, deliberately monochromatic. We changed the color of this section here to match your brand. So when you're reusing it multiple times, it just feels like what you need. This option here has the triangle image, but there's loads of options we can choose from. We can find them in the not linked section on our menu. They're all in folders. So let's have a look at the Hero Classic, for example. And now we can see it's got our color palette. So the color palette and the contrast may not work based on the changes we've made, but we can already see it's looking more individual. We've got this nice serif font here for the heading, and then sans serif for paragraph and buttons.
If I go to full screen, it's now a case of finding one that I think will do the job nicely for what we want. So I'm going to be using stock photos for this. I think I'm going to go with this. So we'll go a photo on the right here and then just a grid block behind, which is a solid block behind the title. The reason I'm seeing this is for the Square Websites Chrome extension, which is a fantastic, really handy tool that allows us to copy and paste sections from one to another. It's available if you head over to Pixelate Academy. We've got a full dedicated section on Square Websites plugins, which we partner with, and they're great. For now, I'm going to disable that extension just so we don't have any confusion when we're using it. Sorry, guys. Once again, though, great selection of plugins, and the Chrome extension has saved me hours of time, and it's ideal if you're a pro user of Squarespace and are on it every day like me. But now we're going to go to this section, and I'm going to click on this little heart icon, and that will save it to our favorites. And what I'm going to do now is just go through the options here. And we've got 4 signposts. We've got a section with an intro paragraph, and we've got our hero section, which we've just saved. So let's go back to pages, and now let's have a look at some content blocks. I'll expand this section, and we want a short content block, and something like this will probably be exactly what we need. We might even go with this one, which has got a little thumbnail image as well. So I'll save that. We're going to need some testimonials, and we're going to need some signposts. So I can just collapse these folders when we're done with them. And we're going to go with signpost 4 column plus. So I'll go with the classic option first, see what's available to us. That's quite nice. We could put photos in behind each of these signposts. I want to go for a nice image heavy design. This could work really nicely too. Definitely want to go with something with images. Or we've got the option to put in 4 large image blocks with a 2-and-2 layout. Decisions. Let's go with this option here. So I click edit. We can see when we go to full screen, these 2 images go to full width, which is quite a nice effect. So we're going to go with that. We're going to exit out of that. And we've got to get our testimonials. And I think we're about done then. But in fact, there will be a card option we need to choose. So the testimonials are under quotes. So let's go with a 3+. And we can go with this one, I think. Or maybe this one here. Yeah, we're going to go with this one here. We can see there's a little animation behind it. And we'll save that testimonial block as a favorite. If any of the layouts are a little bit fiddly, it's usually the testimonials when using SquareForge. I don't know why. When we save them as favorites, sometimes we've got to go into it a couple of times and just give it a bit of a shake for it to work. Okay, nearly there. There is one final option though. I wanted to put in a section that breaks down the step-by-step guide to how the baking process works. So what we're going to need to do is find a content block that would work for that. And I've got just the idea. Go to signposts and go to cards. So we could look at this. Or we could go into content benefits, which is another way of laying out this type of content. This could be quite nice. We could upload an individual icon with each of these. I don't have the icons available, so we might have to just skip that process and use our imagination of it, that we're going to put an icon set that we could build really easily in Canva. In fact, I might even do a tutorial showing how we can build those icons and finish this off using Canva. So there we go. We've saved that one. We've got 6 options in, 6 steps in the content created, so that's good. And let's head over to our home page and start building this out. So I click edit. Now we're going to add a section. I'm going to go to saved sections. I'm going to start from the bottom and work up. If I'd thought about it, I would have put the content in reverse maybe. I think I'm going to put the benefits above the testimonials. Because we've got this section here with the short introduction, I think we're going to bring the signposting up. And I'm really liking that color palette. It's just nice and minimal. So let's save that and now start bringing our content in. So we're going to start with the title. Of course, in most cases, we'd recommend a client goes through the process of having a professional logo. It does make a difference. I called it Castle Bakery, didn't I? Could have just typed that. One thing we're not going to look at today is the navigation. But to build up a menu navigation, we can add pages to this menu here. All of our Forge layouts are in the not linked section, so they don't interfere with the website itself. Apart from this page here, which is linked by a button, and that's updatable via the masthead section, or the site header as Squarespace calls it here. So the first thing we can see is that the titles don't work really well when they're all caps, or certainly not my preferred choice for this type of content. So we're going to go with something really simple, freshly baked bread. I'm going to go with a heading 1. And I've got the option here to edit it. I could make it full width. Expand the text to the container width to do something a bit different. I think we'll go with that. Something a bit different. Maybe adjust the line height, but yeah, I think we'll go with that. So what will happen sometimes is when we go with larger font, it will just expand the containers. So we just need to do a little bit of adjusting to get that back. And if we're looking at needing more even spacing, terrible. If we're looking at getting the spacing balance between these sections, we can play around with this with the alignment option on this line here. Okay, I think we'll go with that. Maybe even go one more width and go with a really bold, striking heading. Yeah. We'll settle for that because we're on limited time and I want to get this wrapped up within the next 10 minutes or so. Now we're going to replace this image and we're going to search for free stock images. And I'm just going to search for bakery. I'm just going to go for this one here, product front and center, but it's also got a human element. That could be the owner of this fictional business. Now we're going to put our tagline in place. So we go back to ChatGPT and that's very cheesy, but we'll go with it. Select all and paste. And from here, we can maybe change the paragraph size to make it a little bit bigger. Maybe even drop it to center of the line. So we've got roughly even spacing above and below that line. We'll need to go over to mobile in a bit and fix that because some of the changes we made will have adjusted it a little bit. But overall, I'm quite happy with that as our hero. We could do something completely different with this side here. For example, we could go to change it to a shape and circle being the most popular. Squarespace could definitely do more with these shapes, give us more options to work with. We can go with that option there, but actually I'm going to keep it to the square and set it to fill the frame. And now we're going to move on to our next section. Here, even though I like the colors, of course, this will not come out like this because we're going to be swapping these with photos. In SquareForge, I've put photos as solid block colors just because it makes it easier for you to imagine what you want in place. Sometimes with strong photos, it can sway your decision making a little bit too much. Just going to check what the signposts are. So here I want people in this one because it's our story. I think we'll go with that one. And we can see we've got a challenge here already. So I could go for an overlay on each of the images. I'm definitely going to do that. And we'll go for the darkest color on the overlay. And then we just bring back the opacity so we can see it clearly enough. We could try it with the gold color. I think I'll do that and then change the color of the section. So if we go to edit section here, and we can see it's one of the darkest options. If we go to the lightest, the text then goes to darker. But it's always a trade-off. And we might have to increase that overlay to give it the impact it needs. For me, I would probably edit this photo. I would take the saturation right down, so it's a black and white photo, bring the contrast up, and probably the brightness down. because when we add the overlay now, there'll be more clarity on the image behind, and it blends better with the layout. And we can adjust it then. This used to be very popular in graphic design. It's kind of gone by the wayside in terms of having watermarked images behind, but it still can have a place when worked properly. So let's do the same now with this section here. Have a look at the content for this section, which is menu. I'm just going to search for menu here. It probably won't be right. So now we set a precedent with this one. We're going to need to go in to edit this photo, and the same approach. Take the saturation to black and white. Make sure it's got good contrast and just darken the whole photo. So when we put the gold overlay on top of it, it fits, and we can just adjust it by eye. So if I go to design, overlay, change it to our gold color, and bring this back so it fits with this one here. Another option, of course, we can just check by eye in terms of the positioning on this one and make sure they match. But I'm quite happy with that. There seems to be a nice flow from one section to the next. The challenge we got here is finding photos that have red. This is the free stock library that's got a little plugin directly into Squarespace, which is nice. I think we'll go with the croissants. See if there's anything for Brecon, maybe the Brecon beacons or something like that, which could be quite nice. I think we'll go with this photo here, showing the rural location for the bakery. I could go in and crop each of the photos so that they take a smaller file size, because it's only showing the ratio of the photo, but I think I'm fine with that. Gives us more flexibility if I stick with the original in this design. Obviously we need to change the text. I'm going to save that and jump out of it back into it, just because I'm paranoid about potentially losing connection and then losing all of that we've just done, which I probably would cry. And now we've got this section looking quite nice. Let's just change this text quickly. So we go back here. So what I tend to do is just select the text after the first character, and then remove the first character afterwards, then jump through each of the options. So hopefully we'll get this to fit on one line throughout. The only thing is it's just moved everything up, which is a pain. So if I paste it without selecting the first character, we can see we've lost the first character. So we're just going to paste that in again. So that's one option. We could just bring it all down, which will save us a bit of time, and then just select the background image and move that back up afterwards. And that's fitting onto one line, at least when this is full width. Go to Visit Us now. Select everything after the first character. And before I start doing any more adjustments, I'm going to put in the placeholder text for the paragraph section. I'm going to speed this up now just so you don't have to sit and watch this. Okay, a little bit of formatting there, but we're now done, so I can save it once more. We'll use this as a heading. Again, same format, paste it after the first. And I'll probably start the paragraph with that. Should have done the same thing. We'll put this as the start of a sentence. I know that's not grammatically correct, but this is just placeholder content. So what I can do here is put this to a paragraph 1, just so we can go into the content that little bit easier. And here we can bring in another bakery photo. We'll go with this photo, just to offer something a bit different. So we've got some options here. We can go into the design settings, and I'm going to set this to fill, just to fill that layout. And what I'm also going to do is move this and make sure the text is centrally aligned so it fits with that image. Or another option, we can actually make the image a little bit smaller, which I might go for. So what I could do here is go for more like a 4:3 photo instead of perfectly square. Alternatively, I can bring it in. And I'm going to edit the section, and now let's adjust the gaps. So I'm going to go with a 30 pixel gutter between those sections. And I can adjust the gutter height to get it so it looks relatively square. Now I can set this back to center, and that works quite nice. So I'm happy with that. We've got nice equidistant spacing. Okay. I don't think I'm going to change the testimonials in this one. It's more copy and paste, and I don't think we need to worry about that. Likewise with the key benefits. Remove that section. We can bring this up then. And now it would be a case of just copying and pasting that content across, which again, I don't think I need to worry about this one. What I am going to do though is just put another photo in here. I will go through and just put in the remainder of the content. In fact, we'll probably sell this as a template on our store, but if you've got SquareForge, you don't need to worry about that. And I'm going to change the color of this footer section as well. Maybe, I don't know, not sure. Okay, we now have the outline structure of our template converted using SquareForge, and there'll be a few changes I would make with a little bit more time. But in just over half an hour or so, I've been able to get a look and feel that translates well across the site. We've got some elements that break it out of the Squarespace template and look unique, which I quite like. I think this section here, I'd probably get rid of the white lines. So this might just tweak it a little bit. Yeah, so I'd have to go through now and just change the colors back, which is a bit of a pain, but it gives me those darker lines in between each of the sections. What I'm going to do instead is add a block, a shape behind it, because this will stop us from having to redo everything. So I'm going to drag it in front to start with, across the full section. Just click off it and back on, and now we can move it right the way to the back. Just keep clicking it until that goes grayed out. And now we've added the block in behind, but we will have to fix this and go through the entire site on mobile view.